take the pink, and then some blue, and then the green, and then more pink, and then a dash of blue. Coloring, coloring, coloring. There's another color. Do-do-do. Look, I drew us. Bus driver, are we there yet?
Hello! Hello, Noel. Hello, Fuki. And thank you, Noel, for reminding me about the coloring song. Yippee! I'm curious if anyone would remember the meme from my title. It just popped in my head. And I'm like, oh, I unlocked a memory. 1 second, I'm getting my tablet. And, oh yeah, I wanted to share a couple sketches in the Food Cord so that it's easier to send to myself. I got the main thing I want to color today is, as the title suggests, slime creature, our new headmate, Goozleen. And hang on, where's art channel? And oh, a Hollow banner because Hollow's debuting tomorrow. The title was about to be what? What was the title about to be? But I also got. Why is this picture rotated? 1 second. I should have done this before I started. Hang on, I can't like talk and type. After like almost a year, we're gonna go back to doing the pop-in challenge, which is where we color every single pop-in music character. We gonna go game by game, and we like to alternate between an old game and a new game.
We are happy you're here. Yeah, you.
Me? Wow! Let me reach for the cord. Oh, about you. It could be about you too. Boop boop. Oh yeah, and I think I'm gonna play what's the podcast called again? Wow, it's the one podcast called not System Speak, but the scary one. I did not mean to change. I did not mean to change scene. I meant to turn display capture on. Oh, this is the Nubia thing that I still have. Nubia and Zoe that I still have to finish. Not so much with coloring, but with adding background and, well, I guess that's coloring, but I'd rather do that on my own time. Hi, Rasa! Can only be about one slime being, and Goose deserves the stream to be about them. Him, it. Oh, Goose uses its pronouns. I think Goose is like Nana with being omnigender. I think, but I think it fits it the best. Casually hit start stream screen to start over with no consequences. I love doing that as a bit. Actually, I don't know if we've done that as a bit. I feel like maybe once or twice someone has. Let's see. What should I think I might actually color Hollow first. So you get to see. You get to get like a hint of what Hollow might look like. Also, this picture is kind of blurry because I think I pulled away or something. Oh, not that. What? That's alphabet. Hang on. Yeah, with the Poppin' Challenge, we colored all the characters from Poppin' Music 1, all the characters from Usagi to Nekoto Shonen no Yume, the 24th game, all the characters from Eclagle, the 23rd game. We're almost done with Peace, which isn't that impressive because Peace didn't have that many characters. And we were in the middle of Lapistoria, and we're doing 2. So it sounds like 3 games. But I think it was because we were doing Lapistoria, we got interrupted by Peace. We decided to color the Peace characters since there weren't that many, or draw him, I mean. So I got Rave Girl and MZD, but I might just color Rave Girl because I really probably only want to stream like 3 hours tonight, so I'm not too late for Sonic. Oh, that reminds me, I think Goozleen was gonna join on Sonic. Small Hollow. I gotta get up coloring reference. What is Magnus Archives? It just popped in my head. Small, I love that. I got a kitty cat. Oh, he's walking away. Here it is. Hollow. Trying to copy. Yeah. Smallow. I feel like Magnus Archives would be good to listen to with Hollow and Goozleen, but maybe after I'm done with those 2, I might listen to the System Speak, or I might listen to more the chilled video game music thing I was listening to before. I could also show you guys. So you guys try to see what we've been working on in Live 2D. It's someone else's character, but it's like it's like a model that you download to follow along with this class someone did like a couple years ago that we found. It's really all over the place right now because we haven't done all the parts yet, but like, see, we're just now figuring out how to do like the frames, the keyframes. Your ear fell off. I think we actually moved the ear way over there to get it out of the way because it was like it was like here, but then when we moved the head over here, it's like here, so it's like right in the face, so it's hard to see what the face would look like. And I feel like we would be better at figuring out how to move the head to another angle if it was our own characters. Oh, wait, I don't want to close it, but I should save it. I'll cancel and then save. Yeah, I'm excited with... It's like, I think it's easier to understand than we thought it would be. Oh, the layer behind that might be a good idea. Or are your ears in front of you? Or are they behind you? I think they're next to you. It's hard to decide how layers work sometimes. We didn't do the layering. They did the layering, so it's their fault if it's wrong. Wait. Sorry, my brain is a little all over the place. Magnus Archives. Could have played the complete collection, but I know we were listening to a season 1 playlist, so that will tell me where we're at. We're at number 36. That's almost done with season 1. Gotta turn it up. Is that good? Turn it up a pound.
Rusty Quill presents The Magnus Archive.
I'm so excited for Hollow's debut tomorrow. Oh, did I ever slurp? I can't remember. I'll slurp again.
Episode 36. Taken Ill.
Oh, it was Taken Ill. I thought the title, I thought it said Taken 3. I was like, what about Taken 1 and 2? I guess those aren't movies. Infinite Souls.
Statement of Nicole Baxter regarding visits culminating in the fire that consumed Ivy Meadows Care Home in Woodley, Greater Manchester. Original statement given November 19th, 2012. Audio recording by Jonathan Sims, head archivist of the Magnus Institute, London.
Have to change the brush softness.
Statement begins. Fear is a strange thing, isn't it? What you're afraid of. For most people, a corpse is at the least unnerving and for some outright terrifying. Or maybe it's disgust. They are two very different feelings, aren't they? Though they often bleed into each other, if you'll pardon the pun. I work as a funeral director, so as you can imagine, how I feel about death and the body is a bit more complicated and more immediately relevant than it is for most people. Dealing with cadavers day in, day out forces you to confront all manner of things about yourself. Simply put, I have found that I do not believe in any sort of afterlife. I have seen people cold and lifeless upon the mortician's table who I knew, who I remembered as vibrant and lively. There was no soul that had departed, no special spark that passed on to something else, simply a body that no longer moved or spoke or thought. It feels odd to consider the fact that you will no longer exist someday. But you didn't exist for billions of years before your birth, so it doesn't seem unreasonable to conclude that you will not exist afterwards in much the same way. I try to see life as a pleasant holiday from non-existence.
Holiday.
It provides some comfort when the truth of my own mortality stares me in the face every day. There is one thing about dead bodies that does bother me, though. One thing that eats at me, as it were, and does give me that sick tightness of fear deep in my gut. It is rot. I don't know why it gets to me so. Perhaps it's precisely because I don't think there is anything beyond the body, and even dead and unaware, seeing a person's form begin to putrefy and fester, becoming just a home for the crawling, feasting things is too much for me. Perhaps it's just an unaccountable phobia. Regardless of the reason, the fact is that to see the corpses decaying, to see their flesh corrupted, it is the one part of this job that I find uncomfortable. So much so that I would describe reconstruction and preservation as my favorite part of the process, making sure the cadaver looks as peaceful and lifelike as possible. Make them the person they were, or as close as they can be while cold and senseless. Fighting off the rot, the insects, the disease. I don't know why I wrote disease just then. They're dead, so they can't be diseased in the normal sense, can they? I suppose it's just thinking about what happened at the Ivy Meadows Care Home links them in my head. But it's not just that, is it? That the fear, the feeling, that tingling, squirming fear at the back of my mind, it feels the same when thinking of the germs that corrupt and twist our bodies, lurking invisibly on any table or surface, or when I saw those swarming flies. How many more moved and buzzed just out of sight? I've never had any mental health issues before, but perhaps after my experience I should consult someone. I read once that OCD can come on later in life, if a severe experience sets it off. I'm rambling. Disregard this first page, I'll start again.
Okay.
I work as a mortician at Baxter & Gordon Funeral Directors in Woodley. By rights, it should now just be Baxter Funeral Directors, as William Gordon passed away himself about 5 years ago, leaving my Uncle George running the place on his own. He kept the name, though, as he always said it was one of the most respected in all of Manchester. God knows there was no sentimental reason to keep it. From the way he talked, he and William Gordon hated each other by the end, to the point where the will expressly stated that the body of William Gordon was to be handled and prepared by Fenchurch and Sons, one of my uncle's great rivals. Maybe that's why Uncle George is so keen to keep it in the family. He hired me and my cousin Josh to help, and now Baxter & Gordon Funeral Directors is entirely run by Baxters. I've been there for almost 4 years now and have taken over most of the client-side arrangements of the business. My uncle has gotten somewhat brusque in his old age and is now more suited to organizing things with churches and crematoria rather than handling the recently bereaved. As such, I've gotten to know the various nursing and care homes around Woodley rather well. We generally get a few removals from any given one each year, maybe as many as a half dozen if the winter is bad. It's certainly our most reliable source of business. Of them all, Ivy Meadows was my favorite. For a funeral director to say she has a favorite nursing home probably sounds a bit like the Grim Reaper talking about his favorite hospital, but it's true. Ivy Meadows Care Home was on the outskirts of Woodley, where the suburbs gave way to pockets of green countryside. It wasn't remote, exactly, but it was removed enough from the main road that it stood alone, surrounded by rather lovely gardens on 3 sides and a long open field behind it. It had been a country house once, I believe, but not much of the original structure remains, having been modified and expanded to provide accessible accommodation for about 30 residents. It was an odd building, with modern glass and concrete sections sprouting from old turreted brickwork, like blocky stone tumors. The look of the place wasn't why I liked it, though. No, that was the residents. Ivy Meadows was almost entirely populated by those elderly who were entirely supported by the state. Most pensioners have some savings or property or family to support them, which means if they're unable to live alone they can at least afford to pay for their own care, or some of it. It's rare for a person to reach that age and have literally nothing to pay for their care, but it does happen. In these cases, the state pays for them, but they have little choice in where they end up. Ivy Meadows was almost entirely populated by these. Old people without money or family sent to be looked after by strangers. You'd have expected the atmosphere to be unpleasant, some morbid combination of prison and hospice, but it was quite the opposite. Something about the mutual loneliness seemed to lead them to create a real sense of community. It was the only place I ever went where the residents still gave me a smile. Hannah Ramirez, who ran the place, would always tell me a bit about the deceased and their time there, and I was inevitably shocked by tales of drugs, sexual escapades, and other gossip that sounded more like a high school than a nursing home. I think Hannah enjoyed trying to get a reaction out of me when I was trying to be solemn. It was just a happy place, even if I was only there to do a sad duty. It all started to change about 3 months ago, after Hannah left. I don't know exactly when she left her post or why. We hadn't had a call from Ivy Meadows for a couple of months, so it must have happened during that period. I don't know where she moved to either. It certainly wasn't any of the other care homes around Woodley, and it wasn't like I knew her personally. I'd gotten a call from one of the nurses, Alenka Kozel, who said that one of their residents had taken ill and passed away, a man by the name of Bertrand Miller. I asked her for a few more details. She started to say something else, but the call was cut off almost abruptly. I didn't really think too much about it. Most of the details could be worked out when we arrived, so I called Josh and loaded up the car for a removal. It was a hot, mid-August day, and the air was thick and humid, making everything feel sticky, like the whole world was running a fever. The sky was overcast, though, an orangey grey that cast muted shadows and seemed to muffle the world. It was about a 10-minute drive to Ivy Meadows, and neither of us said a word. I don't know why. At that point we had no idea that there was anything wrong, but looking back it seems like we both felt there was something off about it. Or maybe we were just too hot for conversation, and hindsight is colouring my memories. When we arrived, the place was silent. There were no cars in the parking area, which was not unusual, but I couldn't see a soul anywhere on the grounds. Maybe they were simply staying out of the heat. Josh and I got out of the car and approached the door. I pressed the buzzer, as I had done so many times before, expecting the cheery voice of one of the receptionists. Instead, there was just dead air, followed by the clunk of the door being remotely unlocked. I looked at Josh, who shrugged, and we went inside. Ivy Meadows Care Home was usually much as you would find any other. Air-conditioned and smelling faintly of cleaning products and cheap potpourri. This time it was different. The smell now was just as faint, but seemed rancid, while the air itself was close and damp. The beige walls seemed dirtier than before, with dark marks at roughly hand height. There was a faint buzzing like a fly, but I couldn't see any source for it. None of it was so bad as to make us turn back, however, and we headed towards the reception desk. There was nobody behind it, and I rang the bell. I always wore gloves when on a removal, and was glad of that fact now, as I noticed a greasy residue on top of the small brass bell. The door to the reception opened, and a tall man stepped out. He was rail-thin and wore a faded brown suit that seemed to have been cut for a much fatter man. His eyes were a watery blue, and his dark hair stood on the top of his head in an unruly mess. He must have been around 40, but had a nervous sort of energy to him. He was quite a surprise, to say the least. Josh recovered faster than I did and asked the man, a bit rudely, who he was, where we could find Hannah. The man shook his head at this and said that Ms. Ramirez had left the position and he was now director of Ivy Meadows. He introduced himself as John Amherst and held a hand out for Josh to shake. My cousin stood there for some time, staring at the thick, sweaty hand of this strange man, clearly not wanting to shake it. Mr. Amherst just stood there, arm outstretched, apparently unconcerned. A fly landed on his face, and if he noticed, he didn't give any sign of it, not even when it walked across his eye. Eventually, the now clearly shaken Josh stuttered out some semi-polite excuse and backed away. At this, John Amherst lowered his hand and turned to me. He asked why we were here. This took me rather by surprise, as there's generally only one reason undertakers show up in such a place. We told him we had received a call and been told Mr. Miller had passed away. Amherst asked who had called us, but with such a sharpness in his voice that I lied and said the caller hadn't given their name. He paused, clearly considering what to say next very carefully. Finally he nodded and said that yes, Bertrand Miller was dead, and we could have him. Then he gestured for us to follow and began to walk back into the main building. As we walked, he began listing the details for Mr. Miller's funeral, such as they were. No family or friends, no savings or insurance, simple cremation as soon as possible, no service to be held at the crematorium, ashes to be returned to Ivy Meadows in whatever the cheapest option was for an urn made of brass. At this I asked what he wanted the ashes for, and he simply waved his hand in a vague dismissal and said they'd be wanting to have a private remembrance service. By now we'd been walking for a few minutes, and I hadn't seen another soul in the corridors. I thought I spotted one of the nurses at one point, but they had turned and walked away as soon as they saw us. We arrived at a room bearing a small plaque. It read, Bertrand Miller. John Amherst opened it without hesitation and went inside. The smell was what hit me first. I've smelled plenty of corpses in my time. I'd almost say I'm used to the smell.
Have you smelled
This was different. There was some deeper taint there than simply putrefying flesh, and it made me gag. By the look on his face, Josh smelled it as well. Then I got a good look at the body on the bed and almost turned and ran. Based on the colour of those sections of skin still whole and unblemished, Mr. Miller couldn't have been dead for more than a few hours, half a day at most. You wouldn't have known, though. Large sections of his body were covered in a wet, creamy yellow rash, which... I'm not a doctor, so describing exactly what it did to the flesh it touched would serve no purpose except to start me having the nightmares again. Let us just say that it gave a plentiful home for the flies that swarmed around his body. We looked at John Amherst, utterly appalled. He said not to worry, that the disease that had claimed poor Mr. Miller wasn't contagious. He even produced the recently signed death certificate, though it was stained with some dark grey fluid, so I did not examine it too closely. He then apologized that the air conditioning had broken. I'm sure you know all about what heat does to cadavers, he said. I just wanted to get out of there, and have never been more grateful to whoever designed care home beds so that we could remove the body with as little contact as possible. Even then, on the way out, I felt a sudden tickling pain on the back of my left hand, and looked down to see the thick leather glove in contact with one of the patches of yellow. I nearly screamed and dropped the body, but did neither. Ivy Meadows did not feel then like a safe place to do either of those things. In fact, I kept my composure through the whole of the drive home. As soon as we arrived, I ran into the bathroom. Throwing my gloves into the medical waste bin, I scrubbed the patch of skin that still felt like it was crawling. I could see nothing wrong with it, but I kept scrubbing until it was bloody, then poured disinfectant over it until it went numb. When I finally left the bathroom, I found Josh arguing loudly with his father. Apparently, Uncle George was not satisfied with the explanation given for the state of Mr. Miller's body. He turned to me and asked what had happened. I told him the same thing Josh had, the same thing I've told you. We went over it slowly, point by point, until finally he stood there silently looking, worried but determined. He had us tell it to him one more time before he nodded, told us to stay away from the corpse of Bertrand Miller, and left, telling us he had to make a few calls. I have never seen a cremation done with such a quick turnaround, and he was burned before the end of the day. I asked Uncle George about returning the ashes in a brass urn, but he shook his head and said he'd already had them disposed of. I knew my uncle wasn't one to share his thoughts when he didn't want to, and that seemed to be the end of it, save for those times throughout the day I would feel that tickling in my hand and run to scrub it away.
Really?
I went on a couple of other jobs, and it seemed like we were expected to forget it. Josh didn't talk about what happened, and I got the impression he was trying to ignore what he had seen. He always was a practical soul. I couldn't let it go, though. It just kept playing in my mind. So when the phone rang 2 weeks later and I heard Alenka's voice on the other end, my heart skipped several beats. What she said did nothing to allay my fears. The line was bad, very bad, but I could have sworn she said, "Come quickly. We've taken ill. We've passed away." The words repeated as though on a recorded loop, though they were no easier to make out than the first time. Finally, I put the phone down. I was technically off duty at that point, having just finished my shift, so I could have ignored it. I could have walked away. Instead, I put on my normal clothes, grabbed 3 pairs of gloves, and got in my car.
Zombies, check it out.
The drive there was dreadful.
Hurry, check it out.
Still hot. I kept looking at turnings and junctions and imagining where I would go if I turned away from Ivy Meadows and just drove off. But I didn't. I kept taking those old familiar turnings, moving inevitably towards that sick, old building. When I arrived, it was quiet. The whole building looked filthy now, even from the outside, and the plants that bordered it had started to take on an unhealthy, whitish color. There was one other car in the parking area, a faded white transit van I didn't recognize. I got out and started to walk towards the front door. The smell was noticeable even from out here, and by the time I got close enough to reach the buzzer, it had become so strong as to be unbearable. I tried to bring myself to press the button, But instead I turned and half sprinted back to my car, desperate to breathe clean air again. I stood there, torn between wanting to flee and needing to know. Then in the silence I heard it. Tap, tap, tap. Someone banging rhythmically on a window. I scanned all the ones I could see, but they were dark. Tap, tap, tap. It showed no sign of stopping, and I began to make a wide circuit of the building. It was on the other side that I saw it. A large ground floor window showed what I think would once have been the lounge. The walls were dark, stained and smeared to almost black, but the windows were clear. Stood the other side of the glass, weakly banging her fist against it, was Alenka Kozel. Her skin was mottled, covered with that leaking yellow rash. She saw me,
Why not have the spiral?
and as her eyes locked with mine, she opened her mouth, and the buzzing of the flies that spewed out was almost as loud as her scream. I turned and began to sprint back towards my car. I had to get away to get out. Then, without warning, I felt something heavy hit me in the side and I lost my footing, falling to the ground. I looked up to see an old man pinning me to the ground, his long white beard matted and filthy. I screamed and tried to escape, but his age seemed to have done nothing to diminish his strength, and he kept his grip easily. Then he spoke in a thick Mancunian accent and told me to keep my voice down. I noticed that his skin was unblemished pink, and behind him stood a young woman, tall and lean, with close-cropped hair and a deep scar over her right eye. She carried a large canvas bag and was shaking her head, telling the old man to leave me alone. After a few suspicious glances, he got up. I could swear I recognized him from somewhere, but when I asked the two of them who they were, they just shook their heads and told me to leave. I asked them what was going on, and the old man looked at his companion as if asking permission, said something about knowledge being a good defense here. She shook her head and said that leaving quickly was a better one. I didn't need to be told a third time. I got in my car, and I left them to their work. I didn't turn around even when I saw the smoke start to rise behind me. And that was the last time I went there. Now, if you'll excuse me, I need to go wash my hands. Statement ends. The Ivy Meadows care home in Woodley was officially decommissioned in July 2011, a month before the first of these alleged calls came in. It burned down on the 4th of September that same year after a leaking gas main caught fire. If the gas was already leaking, this might have resulted in hallucinations or other problems during their initial visit. There is no record of the body of Bertrand Miller being processed or cremated by Baxter and Gordon funeral directors, but based on this statement, that's not necessarily a point of incredulity. Bertrand Miller was a resident at Ivy Meadows, but according to his death certificate, he passed away on 19th July, a week before the home was decommissioned. There's no record of any funeral arrangements or disposal of the body. In fact, it seems the record from the closure of Ivy Meadows are, well, according to Sasha, calling them patchy would be very generous. There are only transfer records for 7 residents, whereas at last official count the home held 29. The others seem to have been lost in the system somewhere. The majority of the workforce also appears to be undocumented, and I can find no record of any Alenka Kozel on the system. Martin's research would seem to indicate the place employed a reasonable number of international staff they preferred to keep off the books, but it doesn't explain why none of the officially listed staff can be located for follow-up. Except for Hannah Ramirez, whose brief interview simply established she moved to Brighton shortly before the closure of Ivy Meadows and hadn't heard anything about it since. John Amherst, as best we can tell, doesn't exist. We're unable to locate anyone fitting that description anywhere within the care or medical sector, and he certainly never ran any nursing homes. Another tale full of dead ends.
Yeah, there it is.
We did contact the
It
Baxters.
doesn't show up on page.
Joshua Baxter repeated the first part of the above statement. George Baxter told us not to listen to tall tales. Nicole Baxter said she stands by her account, but aside from losing her left hand in what she calls a workplace accident, there have been no further developments. Still, there's a lot here that puts me in mind of other statements. Something in the way Ms. Baxter talks about fear. I can't help but be reminded of statement 014232, how Jane Prentice talks about her own fears. And the old man and his companion, who does that remind me of? If he wasn't dead, I'd think it might have been Trevor. Oh, yes?
Are you free?
Yes. Yes,
you
I'm
free,
just
is
about
it?
finished here. What is it?
Oh, nothing urgent. It's just Elias was asking a couple of questions about the delivery.
Delivery? What delivery?
Well, that's actually what he was asking. Apparently Martin took a delivery of a couple of items last week addressed to you. Did he not mention it?
No, he... Oh, yes, actually, I completely forgot. He said he put it in my desk drawer. Hold on.
What is it?
A lighter. An old Zippo.
You smoke?
No. And I don't allow ignition sources in my archive.
Okay. Is there anything unusual about it?
Not really. Just a sort of spiderweb design on the front. Doesn't mean anything to me. You?
No.
Well, show it to the others, see what they think. You said there was something else as well?
Oh, yes. Yeah, it was sent straight to the artifact storage. Table of some sort. Looks old. Quite pretty, though. Fascinating design on it.
Tim? Tim, it doesn't have a hole in it, does it? About 6 inches square?
I don't know, maybe? I'll be honest, I didn't really notice. It was quite...
Hypnotic, yes. Do you know who made the delivery? Did they sign in?
No. Sorry, no, I don't know.
I need to talk to Martin. End recording.
You don't want to talk to me? Okay.
The Magnus Archives is a podcast distributed by rustyquill.com and licensed under a Creative Commons Attribution Non-Commercial Share-alike International License. Today's episode was written and performed by Jonathan Sims. It was produced by Alexander J. Newell and Mike LeBeau, and directed by Alexander J. Newell. To comment on episodes, make donations and view links, images, videos, and show notes, visit rustyquill.com. Rate and review us on iTunes, visit us on Facebook, tweet us on Twitter @TheRustyQuill, or email us at mail@rustyquill.com. Thanks for listening.
I'm Martin all along. We'll make a what do you call it? Panel for Hollow after stream now. I mean, we already made the picture. That's the part that takes the longest. And now, Goozleen.
Rusty Quill presents
I hope this episode is
The
about a
Magnus
slime monster.
Archives.
I think you mean in Hollow, but thank you. Oh, what you were making. Yeah.
Episode 37, Burnt Offering.
I read that wrong. Oh, I gotta go to Discord. This episode is about a slime monster I'll scream. I don't think it will be called Burnt Offering, but maybe it's a burnt offering to a slime monster.
Tell me again.
Again?
I want it on tape.
What? Why?
I just want a record. To make sure I have something I can
Okay,
check.
okay, fine. There were two delivery
Swanky
men,
offering.
they were big, and they spoke with Cockney accents that might have been fake, and they delivered a
Cockney?
package for you. I don't remember anything
Fake?
else about what they looked
You
like.
think that
Tall.
sounds
They
fake?
looked normal, like you'd expect. They looked like two huge Cockney delivery
Oi,
men. I don't
You
know
think
what
this
else you
sounds
want.
fake?
What about the table?
I didn't see the table. I guess Rosie must have signed for it. I mean, it's her office on the way to artifact storage, so that makes sense.
She says the same as you. Two men, doesn't know how they got in, too intimidated to ask, looked exactly like you'd expect. Useless.
Sorry. Look, John, I do think we should destroy the table, though. I mean, if it's the one from Amy Patel's statement, just in case.
Elias told me the same thing. Luckily, he phrased
will
it as
pick the
advice
colours
rather
first
than an instruction, so
before we
for
start
now
the
I'm
colours.
more inclined to keep studying it. We're not in the business of destroying knowledge.
I suppose.
Why not? It's fun.
Can I go now?
Yes, go on.
Thank you. Look, you need to get some sleep. I'll see you later.
A waste of tape, really. He's right. Might as well get some use out of it. Statement of Jason North regarding the discovery of an alleged ritual site found near Loch Glass in Scotland. Original statement given August 6th,
This is like
2009.
Smile Creek
Audio
here.
recordings by Jonathan
It's kind of
Sims,
unrelated,
head
but it's the
archivist
same
of the
colours.
Magnus Institute, London.
Or maybe.
Statement begins. I just need to know if you can save my son.
You get oranges.
I've asked and asked, and your people only ever tell me to write my statement, put it down on paper for investigation.
Oh.
Is that going to help? No, of course it isn't. Even if you had the power to do something, would you? Or would you rather watch my son burn so you can take notes?
Yeah. I mean,
I've been drinking. You can probably tell from the stains. Well, I don't plan to apologize for ruining your precious paper, and I don't plan to stop. Only way to keep the fear from settling in. If I'm scared I'm going to lose Ethan like I lost everything else, then I'll curl into a ball and never get up.
like
I won't
Sonic.
be able to do anything to stop it.
Except he gets
I
up.
won't let my son burn, even if you cowards don't have the guts
Just
to step
remembered what
up
we
and
wanna
do
do.
something.
We want to do Grady.
I'm sorry, I know. There's no one to blame but my own stupid self, blundering in where I had no right to go. But
Dummy.
yes, I know. You want the whole goddamn story, don't you? So you can look over it in 10 years and go, interesting, long after Ethan and me are dead. Well, fine.
Okay.
There's not much to it, really. For everything it's done
Yeah.
to me, I didn't really do anything at all. Just
Yeah.
messed around in the wrong clearing.
Oh.
I'm an ecologist. Was an ecologist, working for the Forestry Commission up in Scotland. It was a great
Scotland?
job, for me at least. I suppose if you don't like hiking or being alone, you'd have a hard time with it, but for me it was a great fit. Now, up in the north of Scotland, the bit without all the people, there are plantations of evergreen trees, huge ones. And their job is the same as pretty much any other tree, to get cut down for wood. Trouble is, a lot of animals make their homes in and around those trees. Badgers, red squirrels, even pine martens. Do you know what a pine marten is?
I don't know what it is because
It's a wee bear. An adorable wee bear that needs to
Wait,
be
a bear?
protected. Because
That
the
was
pine
like a
marten, like a
squirrel
lot of
kind of
other
thing.
species that live in those areas, is protected by conservation laws. Can't be legally killed without the sort of special permissions logging companies rarely have. So it was my job to walk through all these plantations with a clipboard and note down what animals had made their homes where. You don't need me to tell you that the job can take me a long way from civilization at times. Some of these plantations are
Real.
off the beaten track. Everyone gets so caught up on how small Scotland is compared to other countries, but it's still huge compared to a single idiot
Oh, I
wandering
went.
through the forests. And there aren't so
Right.
many people, so you have large areas all but devoid of human life. It wasn't uncommon for me to find myself an hour or more away from a town or main road or any other human life at all. I didn't mind being alone, though, because I knew I had my little boy Ethan waiting for me back at home, 4 years old and already sharp as anything, and my wife Lucy. She used to be waiting for me as well. You see plenty of strange things out here. That far from anywhere, a lot of folks use it as their own personal dumping grounds. Fridges, microwaves, barbed wire, all sorts. Occasionally strewn throughout the forests and over the hills. I even found a corpse once. Not as exciting as it sounds. They were far too decomposed for me to tell anything about the death. Could have been a mafia hit, or could have been a hiker having a heart attack. Result was the same for me. Radio it in and then lose 2 hours of light babysitting a dead guy while I wait for someone to get up and take charge of it.
In the wrong order.
So, when I saw the clearing, the trees near Loch Glass, I wasn't worried. I figured I'd seen everything messed up the forest had to offer. Heck, I even saw a friend of mine get impaled on a falling tree once. I reckoned there was nothing left to shock me. It didn't matter that the hairs on my arm began to stand up, or that I started sweating through my coat in the middle of February, or that dry, acrid taste at the back of my throat made me want to gag. I still headed on over to investigate this odd-looking clearing. It wasn't man-made, or at least nobody had cut trees down to make it. It looked as though the trees had been deliberately planted in a circle. If that was the case, judging by their growth, they must have been planted like that almost 50 years ago. In the center was a large piece of stone, crudely hacked into what looked like a small seat or maybe an altar. As I stood there on the edge, I realized that the trees around me were completely silent. And after a few seconds of examination, saw that it didn't look like there were any animals at all around this clearing.
At all?
It was unsettling, sure, but it also meant that I had all the information I needed for my survey of that area. I could tick the boxes and move on. I didn't need to enter the clearing, but I did. The moment I crossed that threshold, I knew I had made a mistake. It was like an electric shock rushing through my body, and my already warm skin began to prickle and burn. I stripped off my jacket with sweat dripping from my fingers and reached for my water to try and get rid of that foul taste in my throat. I pulled the cap off and took a long swig. Half a second before I realized the water was boiling hot. I screamed.
Look at that one.
Well, it was more of a gurgle, really, and fell to the floor in agony. I lay there for almost half an hour, collecting myself and just breathing in the cold winter air of the highlands, waiting for the pain to die down. Eventually, I managed to compose myself and stagger to my feet. The strange sensations were still there, but I was able to mostly choke them down, at least until I had a proper look around the clearing. The altar was the focus of the whole thing, but in many ways it was the least interesting part. Clean, smooth stone. No markings of any sort, nothing on top, just a rock. Around it, though, on the ground, were scorch marks. They didn't seem to radiate out from any one angle, they just covered areas of the forest floor. There was no ash, though, or debris, or anything that might have meant a fire. Just the burn marks. It was following these scorches that led me to the really messed up stuff, because what I saw around the edges of the clearing put them to shame. See, it looked like there were animals in that place once, but now each one lay just beyond the edge. On all of them, the fur or feathers had been burned away, and all that was left was their skin, scalded a vivid, angry red, like they'd been badly sunburned. They were dead, every one of them, though none seemed to have decayed any more than their compatriots. Either they had all died together, or something in that place was keeping them fresh. Neither option sounded grand to me. Finally, I looked at the trees. There was nothing wrong with the trees themselves, not exactly. Driven into the trunk of each one was a heavy-looking iron nail. I didn't count how many there were in total, maybe a couple of dozen. Each suspended a worn and dirt-caked glass milk bottle that had clearly seen better days. My eyes fell on the string used to suspend them, and I couldn't help but notice it seemed far cleaner and newer than the bottles or their contents. What was inside each one seemed to vary. Some had pine needles and twigs, some were full of dirt, and one or two even held what appeared to be rainwater. Though looking closer, I could see that it bubbled very gently inside those bottles in an endless simmer. In each, I could also see a small photograph, half buried in dirt or almost boiled clean. They all looked to be the same photograph, though it was hard to tell for sure. An old woman, probably in her 50s or 60s, wearing reading glasses, grey hair curled into a tight bun. She stared out disapprovingly from every bottle. Weirdest of all, on the bottom of each was tied a lock of hair. It was long and grey, in poor condition, and I reckon it must have belonged to the woman in the photograph. It was tied up with the same new string as held the bottles, except for the fact that it was burned, ever so slightly at the ends. I was still in quite a lot of pain from the water earlier, but I've always been too curious for my own stupid good. I took a few pictures on my phone, but I wanted some clear shots of the photograph inside to show my friends. God knows I should have just left. It's not like there weren't plenty of warning signs. I just chose not to pay attention. I picked up one of the jars filled with twigs and took it off the nail, trying to angle it in my hand to get a better shot of the contents. Then my fingers slipped, and I dropped it. I watched it plummet towards the hard winter ground, willing it not to shatter, not to break. It was falling so slowly, but I was even slower. It exploded into 1,000 glass shards, and instantly I knew that I had meddled with something I should have left alone. I turned tail and ran, stopping only to reach down and pick up the photograph. I don't know why. I suppose it felt so weird all of a sudden that I didn't think I could get any more cursed. And I wanted a copy of that picture, just to prove to myself that what I had found was real. It was real. You can have the damn thing now, though. I'll leave it with my statement. I know in my heart getting rid of it will make no difference, but I have to try. Because from that moment on, everything I love and value has burned or been destroyed. My car overheated on the way back to the Forestry Commission, and I barely got out before the engine caught fire. My house was a smouldering heap of blackened rubble before the end of the week. Electrical failure. I don't want to talk about what happened to Lucy. I don't want to think about her face at the end. Now there's only one thing I have left that I value, that I love.
Me?
And I cannot lose him. I can't lose Ethan. I shouldn't be in this mess. It's absurd. I didn't do anything wrong. I just dropped a bottle. That's all. I don't deserve this. I don't. I asked about who might have gone to the area, but aside from some middle-aged businessmen on a hiking trip, no one's been anywhere near that clearing for years. There is no reason this is happening. I'm still going to lose everything. I am so scared. Statement ends. He didn't, in the end. Lose Ethan, that is. Ethan North is currently a healthy 11-year-old boy living with a loving foster family in Inverness. They declined to give an interview.
Yeah, I'm trying to make
I
it
can't
so
say
that
I blame them. The rest is a standard
linear,
model.
like the gradient
Tim couldn't find any evidence of the clearing.
but it keeps
Sasha established all the accidents that befell
I
Mr.
thought
North
if
and
I
his loved
rotate
ones
it like
appeared
this-
mundane in nature. The setup of the clearing matches rituals or spells in both voodoo and Wicca, but nothing definitive. And there is no hard evidence of anything supernatural occurring. There's no reason to believe that when Jason North doused himself in petrol on August the 10th, 2009, then lit himself on fire, he was doing anything other than acting out delusions of a paranoid alcoholic.
I don't know if that's
Paramedics took him to Raigmore Hospital, where he died 3 days later. He never regained consciousness.
I guess it looks cool either.
I suppose there is one piece of evidence.
I would like
Mr. North did include with his statement the picture he found in the bottle. It is a photograph of Gertrude Robinson, my predecessor at the Magnus Institute, circa 2002, as best I can tell. I have no idea what this means. I have no idea what any of this means.
It doesn't matter how I rotate it. It doesn't change other
I'm
gradient.
very tired. And recording.
Oh, that's cool. Kind of.
Special thanks to Samantha.
Oh, now it's
Emery.
working.
The Magnus Archives is a podcast distributed by rustyquill.com and licensed under a Creative Commons Attribution Non-Commercial Share-alike International license. Today's episode was written and performed by Jonathan Sims. It was produced by Alexander J. Newell and Mike LeBeau, and directed by Alexander J. Newell. To comment on episodes, make donations and view links, images, videos, and show notes, visit rustyquill.com. Rate and review us on iTunes, visit us on Facebook, tweet us on Twitter at The Rusty Quill, or email us at mail@rustyquill.com. Thanks for listening.
Okay, thank you for letting me know the story.
Rusty Quill presents The Magnus Archives.
It's pronounced archives.
Episode 38, Lost and Found.
Wait, what happened to the other tentacle? I guess because it wasn't on another layer. Hi, you! I'm coming to new headmate. I'm doing a lot of gradient stuff.
Statement of Andre Romeo regarding a series of misplaced objects lost over the course of 3 months. Original statement given June 6, 2012. Audio recording by Jonathan Sims, head archivist of the Magnus Institute, London. Statement begins. Thank you for lending me your pen.
I want to cover the one in the back.
I thanked you when you handed it to me, but I don't know if you'll remember. I wonder, will you forget you lent it to me and believe that it was my pen all along? Maybe instead you'll forget that I ever had one to begin with, and think of me as an idiot who turned up to give a statement without a pen, so you had to lend me
Baka.
My own fault for putting it down, really, assuming I did ever have one. I'll try to keep a slightly closer hold on this one. I've been in the antiques business for a long time. It's not what it used to be. I'm sorry, I know. I always did that.
Yeah, thank you for
Made
reminding
myself
me.
feel
I
more
wanted to
comfortable
do
with
that.
jokes. There's a follow-up to that one, you know? Something along the lines of the joke being so old only an antiques dealer would be able to sell it. I love that one. I think it's clever. But in my whole life it's only ever gotten a laugh once. That's why I remember buying the vase so clearly. I remember that the seller laughed. In the old days, I never would have considered buying wares from the likes of Mikhail Salesa. He has a good reputation for quality, but a bad reputation for legality, as it were. I've had more than one acquaintance sell on a particularly valuable find they got from him, only to discover that it didn't have proper import papers, or that it had been reported stolen years before.
Oh,
Charlie
the
Miller
Magnus
even did some
Archives?
jail time over a Georgian brooch he bought off him, so as a general rule I'd have given Salesa's stuff a wide berth, but,
Oh,
well,
cool.
the antiques business isn't what it used to be. That isn't a joke. I had to close up my shop a few years ago, you see. Actual antiques don't sell to the mass market anymore. Oh, young people will snap up vintage clothes or have any number of cheap faux antique replicas strewn about their living rooms, but as soon as they get a look at the price tag for the real thing, they're out of there like a shot.
Well, yeah.
So I went the same way as a lot of my peers. Lose the premises, start selling only high-margin goods direct to specific clients who can afford them, or shift a few guaranteed sellers on the auction. It's the only real way to stay afloat in the business nowadays, but the competition is intense, and getting the caliber of artifact you need has become a more cutthroat affair.
Ew, did you know
I'm
Hollows
not the
debuted
only one in the
on our
business to recently soften their attitude towards buying from people like
I'm so
Mikhail
excited.
Salesa. It was my first meeting with him, back in March, and I was nervous, so I told my joke. Just offhand, almost a reflex. I didn't expect any reaction, really. I certainly didn't expect him to laugh. But he did. This sudden, deep, throaty laugh that seemed to come out of nowhere. He didn't say anything afterwards, just continued discussing business. But it stayed with me. There was nothing particularly strange about the laugh, not really. Why do I
That
remember
wasn't
it so
strange to
clearly?
you? I thought it was kind of strange.
Salesa was taking me through his showroom. There was a fancy-looking sign above the door, but it didn't do much to hide the fact that it was
really
basically
hard
a
to do a
warehouse.
strange laugh.
Most of the antiques were still in their packing crates, and I couldn't help making a note of how quick and easy it would be for him to pack everything down and disappear if he needed to. Still, I'd made a few good purchases already and was cautiously optimistic. I'd bought a pair of cavalry sabres from the Revolutionary War, absolutely excellent condition, and a British artilleryman's tunic from World War I. A few other bits and pieces as well. I recall I felt a moment of relief that I didn't deal in books, as I caught sight of several crates packed to the brim with heavy-looking volumes. I was looking for something big, though. Something that would make an actual dent in the mountain of debt I'd been piling up. I found it in that old Chinese pot. From the Jiajing period, so Salesa said, and the construction seemed to back him up. The glaze and the workmanship fitted with mid to late Ming dynasty, but there was something off about the actual design. Instead of the pictures or scenes common to the ceramics of the period, the blue glaze was painted on in crisp, thin, geometric lines. They repeated perfectly, and seemed to get smaller and more intricate the closer I looked, but the shapes they formed never lost any of the precision, seeming to continue on however closely I looked. The effect was disorientating, and made the vase seem smaller than it actually was. It made my head hurt a bit when I looked at it for too long. It was amazing. When he saw me staring, Salesa clapped me on the back and named a price that almost made me choke. We haggled a bit, and eventually reached a price I considered only a little bit unreasonable. I hurried my purchases home, feeling slightly soiled by my visit to the warehouse, and very much hoping it would be a good few months, if not years, before I was in such dire straits that I needed to go again. I got home, had a shower and some food, and immediately started to look into finding a buyer for my latest acquisitions. I remember I was planning to make a few calls, but my headache got so bad that I had to have an early night. The problems started soon after.
So weird.
It was little things at first, like my shoes. I'm not a particularly fashion-conscious man at the best of times, so I have 3 pairs of shoes. Comfortable loafers for everyday use, a pair of walking boots for hiking, and some well-shined, polished leather brogues for fancier events. Well, I had a rather upmarket auction that I needed to attend, so I went to put on my nice shoes, but they were nowhere to be found. Not the shoes, not the box I kept them in. Instead, there was a bag containing 2 shirts that I know for a fact I threw away the year before. When I asked my husband David about it, he told me point blank that I had never had any such shoes. Claimed I always wore my loafers when I went to auctions or parties. I know that, compared to some of the ghost stories you must hear in this place, a pair of misplaced shoes seems perfectly trivial. But something felt so wrong about the whole situation. In the end, I did go in my loafers. I don't remember if anyone at the auction noticed. It was about a week later that I got the invoice from Salesa. It was a pleasant surprise, far less than I thought we'd agreed on. That feeling lasted until I looked through the itemized list and realized why the cost was so low. He hadn't charged me for the Ming. I'll admit that I was somewhat conflicted over whether to raise the issue, but...
Sorry, I just want to pause to explain why I'm struggling. It's like, okay, when it's like this, see, the linear wants to go from left to right, but I want to go top to bottom. So normally I would rotate it, and now it go. Oh wait, I wanted the. I want it on its side. Yeah, I want it on its side. Well, this is on its side, right? Yeah. Also, this way. Would this work? But I feel like it still goes in the same way. See, now it's going top to bottom, but I want it to go left to right. If you angle it the way you want, then select linear. Oh, yeah, maybe if I get off of it, get back on it. Oh, that's what you gotta do. Thank you. You had to get off of linear and then get back on linear for it to, like, readjust to the shape or something. Yay! The problem has been solved. I knew I did that before. Okay.
In the end, I decided that even if Mikhail Salesa did work with thieves, I was not going to be counted among them, so I phoned him to try and explain the mistake. He seemed to be in a fine mood when he answered the phone and asked me if I'd had a chance to try out the sabers yet, which I'm pretty sure was a joke. I told him that there was an item he'd missed off the invoice, and he said that no, everything had been double-checked and was correct. I was getting suspicious at this point and thought he might be trying to pull a fast one of some sort with me. Maybe get me to take the blame for some illicit scheme gone wrong. I told him so in no uncertain terms and described our encounter and the vase in minute detail. He was quiet for a few seconds, and then asked me if I could send him a photo of the pot. His tone was different, and he sounded oddly wary when he made the request. I was very on edge by this point, but could come up with no good reason not to agree, so I took a few pictures with my phone and sent them through to him. It was a long time before he spoke again, and when he did, he sounded different, almost scared, I thought. He told me that I could keep it, no charge. I began to protest again, but he ignored it. I remember his exact words. "I do not remember having that thing, which means it belongs to you." Then he hung up. This was all very strange, of course, but even then I wasn't worried. Not like I should have been. It was my book next. A signed copy of Catch-22, my favorite book. Vanished from its place on the bookshelf, leaving only an empty space behind. David just gave me another blank stare when I asked him about it. I admit I almost lost it at him then. Shoes were one thing, but that book meant a lot to me. I accused him of playing some stupid joke, and tried to remind him what I'd gone through to get it, flying over to America for Joseph Heller's last book tour, queuing for hours, and then that dreadful evening I thought that sudden rainstorm had ruined it all. By the end, he was looking very alarmed indeed, and started to ask me how I was feeling. He wanted to know if I'd been under a lot of stress at work, if if there was anything I wanted to talk about. I left. Maybe he was right. Maybe I am crazy. It makes a lot more sense, doesn't it? It would make it neat. Except no. I would need to have gone mad a long, long time ago, before this, for the idea of it being in my head to hold up. My perceptions are the only ones I can trust. Maybe. I don't know. This went on for months. A tie I got for my last birthday, my grandfather's teapot, the tunic I bought from Salesa. Things just kept going missing, and every time David would tell me that whatever it was didn't exist, or it wasn't mine, or I was misremembering. For a while I thought he was actually trying to gaslight me, make me think I was losing my mind. But when the tunic went missing, I called Salesa again. This time he laughed when he told me he didn't remember selling any World War I items to me on my visit. I checked the invoice, and it was no longer listed there. Just empty, accusing paper where the words had been. I know these things were real. I know they existed. Why won't anyone just believe me? This is where I started to come undone a bit. To be honest, I don't think anyone would do much better in my situation. I hadn't made any connection between the old Chinese pot and the disappearances. I mean, why would I? But I also hadn't been able to sell it. Whenever I tried, something would get in the way. The other person would forget to send through a crucial email, or they'd stop responding. Once I managed to get it as far as posting it out to a buyer, but it was returned immediately with a note asking why it had been sent to her. Gradually, I began to get suspicious of the thing. Sitting there, with its cascading, maddening patterns in that vile cobalt blue, trying to tell me that
the body
things didn't exist,
below
that they hadn't vanished when I know they have. I took to watching it. I wasn't getting much sleep, and David was worried sick about me. I know he was talking to various doctors about getting me help. There were certainly a couple of points I was worried about him having me sectioned. None of it helped in the end. It was about a month ago. I had placed the vase in the center of the table and was sat, staring at it, keeping an eye on it, checking for God knows what. This had been my ritual for the previous week, keeping my vigil into the small hours, but
sorry, I bumped my mic.
That night I fell asleep in front of it. I don't remember my dream. Running, maybe? I know I woke with a start, sometime around 2 in the morning. As I tried to rub the sleep from my eyes, I heard a sound from the table in front of me. It was the dull thump of a heavy book hitting the tabletop. I looked, and sure enough, there was my copy of Catch-22 just lying there, in front of that strange ceramic thing, and not just my book. There was a small pile of objects around the base, my shoes, a tie, things I don't even remember losing. One by one they rose up out of the mouth of the vase and tumbled to the table. It didn't matter how big they were. They all seemed to fit. And then came the moment when everything had been disgorged. I saw all the things that I had lost, and I thought it must be over. It must be done. What else could possibly come out of there? And I saw the pale shapes of long, thin fingertips begin to creep above the lip of the pot. I remember thinking that it couldn't be a normal person living in that pot, because the fingernails were too dirty. Isn't that an odd thing to think at a time like that? I ran, of course, turned around and sprinted out of the door and into the street, and didn't return until morning. Maybe I should have called the police, but I was in no state to do much of anything except shiver under a tree for hours. David was gone. I allowed myself some brief hope that maybe he'd just left me.
Fuck you.
Maybe he'd escape with just a divorce. But no. One call to the housing association confirmed that as far as they were concerned, I'd always lived alone, I want to smash that thing. I want to dash
Green
its
to pink
maddening
mix
patterns
that
to the
ugly,
ground and stomp on it until there is nothing left but powder.
in between.
But
there.
it's also disappeared, of course.
Maybe I'll connect them with
I can't
glue.
find it anywhere. It's still taking things, though. Sorry about your
Yeah.
pen.
Oh, that's
Statement
so pretty.
ends. Before I dig too deeply
want
into
it
the
changing
background
it?
of this statement, I feel I should mention something that puts much of it in a slightly different light. Tim actually managed to find a copy of Mr. Romeo's marriage license. It exists, is signed, dated, and official, and half of it is blank. Only Mr. Romeo's details are on the document, and if it wasn't for the context of this statement, it would appear he was married to nobody.
Who's that?
But he was married. This is not the first time Mikhail Salesa's name has come to the attention of the Institute. Even discounting the incidental role he played in case 01129005, he appears to have something of a knack for locating objects displaying more disconcerting phenomena. I believe some of the more bizarre things in the artifact storage area were purchased from him. It has been something of a... Ugh.
Yeah?
I see you. Ha! Whoa!
Whoa, what's happening?
A spider.
A spider?
Yeah, I tried
Spider?
to kill it, the shelf collapsed.
I swear, cheap
Yeah,
cells are just... Did you get it?
I hope so. Think so. Nasty looking thing.
Well, I won't tell Martin.
Oh, God. I don't think I could stand another lecture on their importance to the ecosystem. What?
Look.
Got dented when the shelf collapsed, I guess?
No, it goes right through. I thought this was an exterior wall.
It should be.
I think it's just plasterboard.
Oh, I forgot green and pink together is kind of gross.
Do you see anything?
No, I don't think so.
Yeah, maybe we'll just keep it the way it was with the yellow to blue.
Sasha, run.
No, wait.
Run!
Oh. You were thinking yellow? To pink to
The Magnus Archives is a podcast distributed by rustyquill.com and licensed under a Creative Commons Attribution Non-Commercial Share-alike International license. Today's episode was written and performed by Jonathan Sims. It was produced by Alexander J. Newell and Mike LeBeau, and directed by Alexander J. Newell. To comment on episodes, make donations and view links, images, videos, and show notes, visit rustyquill.com. Rate and review us on iTunes, visit us on Facebook, tweet us on Twitter at The Rusty Quill, or email us
why doesn't
at
that work?
mail@rustyquill.com. Thanks for listening.
Sorry to change our mind so many times, but you guys are probably used to that when it comes to coloring your character. We're thinking blue to pink to yellow. I think we might need to click off.
Rusty Quill presents The Magnus Archives.
Feels like it's coloring at an angle.
Episode 39, Infestation.
Why is that working? Wait. It's like... Or can't? Solid. I click on that, and then I click on there.
Almost.
Leave it! It's
I got it!
Oh, the noise. This...
Shut up and get the extinguishers! The CO2! Get the goddamn CO2! Now!
Yep.
Oh, angry.
Too many. Just keep
We
spraying!
need to go.
Where?
Let me think.
Do you see Prentice? It could get worse. I don't see her. John! John!
This way! Come on, this way, this way! Look out!
Ah!
There we go, recording again.
There we go. I got
Did you
it.
get
Ah!
There! And I just want to point out that I didn't make this much of a fuss.
I think your removal was substantially cleaner.
I'm still not sure why you have this. Drinking in the archives?
What? No, it's for worms.
What?
Well, for pulling the worms out of people, like now.
You, what?
I used to carry around a knife, but I started thinking that, well, cutting into someone laterally wasn't really the most efficient way to get them out. And besides which, they seem to be quite slow burrowing in a straight line. So, given their size, the corkscrew just seemed to be the better option. Look, you guys got to go home every day, okay? I didn't. I've been thinking for a long time about what to do when, well, you know, this happens.
Thank you.
That's why we're here.
Yeah, the room's sealed. I checked it myself when I moved in.
Climate controlled as well, strong door, soundproof. These old files are far better protected than we ever were. All right. I'll grant you it's a good place to lay low, but...
They could still come in through the aircon.
not easily. And not en masse. It is actually safe. Ha! Except, of course, that we're trapped.
Ah. Yeah. Sorry.
I love this. Pretty.
Why record it?
What?
Before, in the office, it was stupid going for the tape recorder like that. And then when you dropped it out there...
I said I was sorry. If I'd known Martin had another one stashed in here, I never would have...
It's fine, I just don't understand. I thought you hated the damn thing. You're always going on about it.
I do. I did. I don't want to become a mystery. I refuse to become another goddamn mystery.
What?
Look, even if you ignore the walking soil sack out there and the fact that we are probably minutes from death, there is still so much more happening
I'm not
here.
entirely sure that we can ignore
Every real statement just leads deeper into something I don't even know the shape of yet. And to top it all, I still don't know what happened to Gertrude. Officially, she's still missing. But Elias is no help, and the police were pretty clear that the wait to call her dead is just a formality. If I die, worm food or something else.
How would there get to be 4 blink?
I'm going to make damn sure the same doesn't happen to me.
Unless they were already there.
Whoever takes over from me is going to know exactly what happened.
You don't think that would put them off?
I hope so. Only an idiot would stay in this job.
Wouldn't that make you an idiot?
Yes, Martin, that was my point.
Mm-hmm.
Can you see what's going on out there?
Ish. When did we last clean these doors?
What can you see?
Worms seem to have backed off a bit. There's a few lurking in the corners. Oh, hey! There's the other tape recorder.
Any sign of Prentice?
No, it looks like they're waiting, I think.
For what?
I don't know. Tim, maybe?
Oh, God.
I think he was out at lunch.
Quick, someone call him. Tell him not to
No
come back
signal
inside.
in here. We just have to hope he heard the noise.
I
John,
heard the noise.
What did you mean by real statements?
You know what I mean. The ones that have weird wrinkles. Well, they just seem to have something solid to them. They all have one thing in common.
They don't record digitally.
And we have to use the tape recorder. At this stage, if it records to my laptop, I almost don't bother. I don't...
There! I see him.
What?
Tim. Tim's outside.
Oh, God, he doesn't know. He doesn't see them.
Tim!
Look out!
It's soundproof.
Tim!
He can't hear you.
What is he doing? No, Tim, just run. Leave it alone.
No.
Oh, God, turn around. Tim, turn around.
Oh, I didn't realize I looked sad.
Oh, screw
When
it.
did that happen?
Wait, Sasha, no!
Tim, look out.
Watch out for the tape!
Uh-oh.
Working? Okay, test. What are you doing on the floor? Statement of Joe Spooky regarding sinister happenings in the downtown
Tim,
old...
look out.
Sasha?
Behind you, run.
Oh.
Goozleen? No way!
Damn it.
No way, that's so funny.
Right. There we go. Martin, what do you see?
What?
I can't really stand up yet. I need you to describe what's going on, for the record.
Yeah, sure. So, Sasha tackled Tim, and there was a kind of struggle, but she made it out of the archives. That was about 2 minutes ago, and she's gone to get help. Probably, I mean, she couldn't, she wouldn't just run, so...
Did it look like any of the worms got her before she left?
No, I don't think so. Tim neither, I think. It was hard to tell after she tackled him. There was a lot of movement and shouting and wriggling.
Stay with it, Martin.
Martin.
Tim. What happened to Tim?
They got split up and he ran into the office. And you said that's where you made the hole. When you were recording, and they all came through, so... He's dead. He's dead in there, and he's covered in worms.
We
That's
don't
it.
know that.
Maybe he found the spare CO2.
Spare? What? Where? I never saw
Oh,
any.
I hid them in old case file boxes.
What? Why?
Well, so the worms didn't know they were there. Look, I know it's stupid.
Yes. Yes, it is. They're just unclassified parasites. They don't have consciousness. They can't plan. They're just an unthinking infection.
Seriously?
What?
Why do you do that?
Do what?
Push the skeptic thing so hard. I mean, it made sense at first, but now, after everything we've seen, after everything that you read, I hear you recording statements and you just dismiss them. You tear them to pieces like they're wasting your time. But half of the rational explanations you give are actually far more far-fetched than just accepting it was a ghost or something. I mean, for God's sake, John, we are literally hiding from some kind of worm queen thing. How could you possibly still not believe?
Of course I believe. Of course I do. Have you ever taken a look at the stuff we have in artifact storage? That's enough to convince anyone. But even before that, why do you think I started working here? It's not exactly glamorous. I've always believed in the supernatural. Within reason, I mean. I still think most of the statements down here aren't real. Of the hundreds I've recorded, we've had maybe 30, 40 that go on tape. Now those, I believe, at least for the most part.
Then why do
Because
you
I'm scared,
Aw,
Martin.
scared.
Because when
John.
I record these statements, it
Good night, Noel.
feels like I'm being watched. I lose myself a bit, and then when I come back, it's like if I admit there may be any truth to it, whatever's watching will know somehow. The skepticism, feigning ignorance, it just felt safer.
Well, it wasn't.
No, it wasn't. Still, it's not my fault we're going to be eaten by worms.
Yeah, it is.
Speaking of, can you see anything?
Not much.
Okay.
They're just there.
How many?
Too many. And more keep coming up through the floor. I didn't think they could get through.
Prentice?
No, I can't. Oh, there she is.
What's she doing?
I don't know. She's messing with the boxes. She's holding one up and... Oh.
What?
She's destroying them. Sort of.
Sort of.
Well, I don't really know what the stuff coming out of her mouth is, but I think we should probably burn them.
Right. Why are you here, Martin?
Yeah, Martin.
Well, Prentice is out there and you can't run.
I mean
so
in the archive, in general. Why haven't you quit?
Are you giving me my review now?
No. We're clearly doing a whole heart-to-heart thing, and truth be told, the question's been bothering me. You've been living in the archives for 4 months. Constant threat of this, sleeping with a fire extinguisher and a corkscrew. Even you must be aware that that's not normal for an archiving job. Why are you still here?
Don't really know. I just am. It didn't feel right to just leave. I've typed up a few resignation letters, but I just couldn't bring myself to hand them in. I'm trapped here. It's like I can't move on, and the more I struggle, the more I'm stuck.
Martin, you're not... You didn't die here, did you?
No, what?
No, just the way you phrased that.
Made you think I was a ghost?
No, it's...
Just really?
Shut up, Martin.
Shut up.
Right, tell me
Oh
again.
no,
John.
the stream crashed for a second.
You did bring a tape recorder. I just thought John would
Where's
appreciate as many
Space
supplementary
Bomb Guy?
recordings as possible for the record.
Well, for the record, if we don't do something now, it won't matter either way.
So, these are the worms he and
The
Martin have been
ones
going on.
terrorising us for months, yes.
To be honest, I always thought they were just overreacting. Other staff have seen them around, but no one's reported any aggressive behaviour or anything like that. You know how those two are. John puts on a good show, but sometimes I swear he's worse than Martin.
Look, Elias, I don't know what you think is going on, but I have just seen thousands of flesh worms pouring out of the wall. God knows how long they've been hiding. Tim might be dead, and the others...
Well, of course. The fire alarm was a good move, but it does mean most staff have evacuated, so we'll have to deal with them ourselves.
There are thousands of them, Elias.
Not quite what I meant. On John's insistence, I recently changed the archive's fire suppression system to use carbon dioxide. Should have done it
So
years
why
ago.
hasn't
really,
it
but-
gone off?
Because there isn't an actual fire.
Right. Can we set it off manually? I think John's got a lighter somewhere.
He's not smoking again, is he? Anyway, it shouldn't be necessary. There is a manual release a few floors down.
Wait, will it hurt Martin or John?
Almost certainly. I'm not a doctor, but I know dumping a lot of CO2 on people isn't generally considered a good idea. I really don't want to have to find another archivist so quickly after Gertrude, but from what you say, it might be a mercy. You know the situation best, so...
Let's go.
I thought that wall was meant to be solid.
So did I. We don't have any sort of weapon, do we?
I mean, I suppose we could
Don't
use...
say the corkscrew.
Okay.
How many of them are outside the door?
I don't know. I can't see because the window is covered in worms.
Right. Damn. Well, Martin, I guess this is...
Hi, guys.
Tim?
Tim?
What the hell? I thought... How did you...
You made it!
Funny story, really. I ran into the office, worms everywhere, horrible death and everything. Tripped and fell into some boxes, and there were like 20 cans of gas in there.
Are you alright? You seem a bit...
Fine gas, bit lightheaded. Not a lot of ventilation in the tunnels. Come on.
Into the tunnels?
Yeah, actually, not that many worms in there anymore. I think they've mostly gone into the archive. Although the ones down here are faster for some reason, and quieter.
You're not bitten, are you?
No, I don't think so. Have a look.
Yes, all right, Tim. You look fine. Put them back on, please.
Can you walk, John?
No, I can limp.
Then let's go.
He's doing
Martin,
yellow.
could you pass me the tape recorder?
Sure. I think it's running out, though.
Fine. I suppose I can turn it back on when we're being eaten alive.
Why do you have a second tape recorder, Martin?
Oh, well, I've been using it to record myself. I write poetry, and I think the tapes have a sort of lo-fi charm.
Lo-fi charm.
I see.
What about?
Okay, John.
Ooh, I like that.
I know you want to know what's been happening. If you're still alive after this, the worms are on the upper floor. Not as many as down in the archive, but enough. I set the fire alarm off, so everyone's evacuated except me and Elias. I didn't see any signs of the fire brigade, but I haven't been near a window in a while. There was I guess you call it a wave of worms. I got cut off from Elias. I hope he made it to the fire system, but who knows? Maybe everyone's dead already. I've had to retreat into artifact storage. That should tell you something about how bad it is out there. God, I hate this place. Did I ever tell you I first joined the Institute as a practical researcher? I had to analyse and investigate all the stuff in here, take notes after sleeping in the rusted chair, write in the memory book, all that sort of thing. I transferred after 3 months. Would have quit, but couldn't afford to back then. Never understood why they keep this stuff secret. I mean, we've enough in here to send any skeptic packing, but it's just locked away. I asked Elias about it once, but he just muttered something about funding and mission statements. He's good at changing the subject, isn't he? Sorry, I'm rambling. No worms, though, so that's good. Oh, hey, I found that table you were talking about. Don't really see what all the fuss is about. Just a basic optical illusion. Nothing special, just wait. John, I think there's someone here. Hello? I see you. Show yourself.
I see you.
How?
Update. I don't know how long we've been down here. These tunnels are a maze, and we don't know where we are. We have
Martin's
four
gone.
of the... I'm getting to that. Martin has disappeared. Tim was right about there being fewer worms down here, but they are much faster, more aggressive. None of us have been hit yet, but during one of the more alarming encounters, Martin ran off.
He thought we were behind him, I think.
He didn't think at all. Tim was with me, and my legs slowed me down. He must have taken a turn we didn't see or something. We lost him. But Tim has managed to find what looks to be an actual trapdoor, so we won't need to bludgeon our way through any more drywall. I'm recording this in case...
In case the trapdoor opens back into the archives and Prentice is there to kill us.
In as many words, yes. Tim.
All right.
It'd take a while to pick the eye color we want.
The Magnus Archives is a podcast distributed by
many are
rustyquill.com
there left?
and licensed under a Creative Commons Attribution Non-Commercial Share-alike International License.
There's only one more. for
Today's
season
episode
one.
was written and performed by
gotta
Jonathan
listen to
Sims.
it.
It was produced and directed by Alexander J. Newell. To comment on episodes, make donations and view links, images, videos, and show notes, visit rustyquill.com. Rate and review us on iTunes, visit us on Facebook, tweet us on Twitter at The Rusty Quill, or email us at mail@rustyquill.com. Thanks for listening. Rusty Quill presents The Magnus Archives. Episode 40, Human Remains.
Statement of,
John, as your boss, I'm telling you to go
I'm
home.
fine.
Look, you look like a mummy. You need rest.
Our friends in the hazmat suits gave me a clean bill of health, bloody holes notwithstanding. And they seemed quite keen to quarantine anyone showing even the slightest sign of infection. It's just pain.
The paramedics said your lungs need fresh air. Tim's as well.
It's fresh enough down here.
A basement filled with 1,000 rotting worm carcasses. Surely we could do this in my office.
No. I need to be here. Keep watch. I need to be sure.
John, she's gone. I went with the ECDC people when they took her away. I watched her body burn. Jane Prentice is dead. You can relax.
You know why I can't. When Martin found...
That's a matter for the police.
Fine. Fine. I'll go home as soon as I have everyone's statements.
Very well.
I think I would
Statement
have
of Elias Bouchard, head of the Magnus Institute, regarding the infestation by the entity formerly known as Jane Prentice. Statement recorded direct from subject 29th July 2016. Whenever you're ready.
There isn't a lot to tell for my part. This afternoon, just after lunch, I was going over some budgets in my office as I normally do on a Tuesday when the fire alarm
Tuesday?
started going off.
It's Tuesday,
Annoying,
isn't it?
but not too worrying at first. I packed my work away and began to calmly head towards the evacuation point when Sasha came barreling through the door, babbling about worms and clutching a tape recorder. I told her that whatever was wrong should wait until we were out of the building, as there may be a fire. She told me she had set off the fire alarm to get everyone out, and that you and Martin and Tim were currently trapped by Jane Prentice. Obviously, this got my attention, and I suggested she turn the tape recorder on, largely so this sort of debrief wouldn't be necessary. Did you not get the tapes?
No, there was some sort of problem. Sasha told me the tape was lost.
Well, I explained to her about the recently installed fire suppression system and said that, as there was no actual fire, we'd need to activate it manually. We hurried down and it was clear everyone else had already evacuated. We had reached the ground floor when... well...
I think that's good.
No, I have often seemed dismissive of your concerns before, and in fact I was getting ready to raise the issue of Martin's continuing to live in the Institute's basement, especially as I believe he's been stealing fire extinguishers. But honestly, I didn't fully appreciate what you've been talking about until I turned that corner and we saw what I can only describe as a tidal wave of filth rushing towards us. I feel somewhat ashamed to admit I didn't really pay any attention to Sasha as I ran and must have lost her at some point. We became separated. I composed myself and decided on a more roundabout route to the boiler room. Luckily, it seemed that things were mainly concentrated in that one mass, leaving the other corridors largely vacant. It took me 10 minutes, maybe 15, but I made it with only one close call. The sight of rows and rows of huge red CO2 canisters was certainly something of a comfort. I do apologize that it took me quite so long to figure out how to actually work the system. If I'd been quicker...
It's fine. We're alive.
Yes, well... I turned on the fire suppression system and that's when I heard the
Just
scream.
want to give a background for a picture
really
reference,
describe it,
and then
but-
I'll do the PNG tuber.
I'm sure I don't need to. You were a lot closer to it than I was.
The last thing I remember before blacking out. Tens of thousands of things without mouths screaming as one.
Yes. Horrible sound. Anyway, I called the fire department, ambulance, and a contact at the ECDC who had previously been involved in the Prentice investigation. Once I was sure most of the gas would have dissipated, I headed down to the archives to see what had happened. Sasha was already there, but you and Tim were in a bad shape. It looked like a few dozen worms had been going into each of you when the carbon dioxide killed them. It was bloody sweet.
Yes. Thank you. I remember everything from when the ambulance arrived. Quarantine, bandaging, etc. When did Martin get back?
It was about an hour after they'd taken you and Tim away. They were prepping Prentice's corpse for disposal when Martin burst out of that trapdoor you found, screaming that he'd found a body. So we called the police.
Tell me what happened to Gertrude Robinson.
John, how many times do we need to go over
We've
this?
never got it on tape.
You can barely stand. Just why don't we do this tomorrow? Fine. On the 15th of March last year, I had a query about a statement one of our researchers was after and went down to the archives. Gertrude wasn't there, but her desk was covered in blood. I called the police and there was a huge search, but there was no sign of Gertrude, alive or dead. She didn't have any assistants, so there were no witnesses, and no one saw or heard anything. The police tested the blood and confirmed the DNA matched to Gertrude, though I don't know why they had her on file. They judged there to be almost a gallon of blood spilled, far more than the human body can lose and survive, so I assumed she was dead and left the investigation to the police for all that good it did me. And I appointed another archivist. Martin finding her body in the tunnels is as much a mystery to me as it is to you.
Right. Right. Thank you, Elias. Statement ends. Can you send in Tim?
Do you need much? I'd really like to go home.
I sympathize. It won't take more than a few minutes. I need the parts that weren't on tape at the time.
Sure. Just quarantine, you know. Not as much fun as it sounds.
You were certainly in there longer than I was. Everything all right?
Yeah. I just made some joke about itching and suddenly they were doing a whole bunch more tests.
Well, itching is
I know. I was trying to lighten the mood. I'm fine, though. Except for the holes. And the pain. And the blood. And the nightmares. Could have been worse, though, eh? Another couple of minutes and...
Yes. Yes. It was... Anyway. Statement of Timothy Stoker, archival assistant at the Magnus Institute regarding the infestation by the entity formerly known as Jane Prentice. Statement recorded direct from subject, 29th July, 2016. Just take it from when you got back from lunch.
Well, I could tell something was wrong as soon as I got back. It was quiet. I mean, it's normally quiet, but it was dead quiet. I spotted the tape recorder lying on the ground and went over to see if it was damaged. And as I was checking it, I heard Sasha shouting. It's a bit of a blur, to be honest, because when I turned around, there she was. Prentice. Her face so full of holes, it's like my eyes are up here, but they're not, you know? They're just... She tried to say something, but I don't know. I couldn't really understand her through all the... So, I could see the worms were coming through the floor, the walls everywhere, the whole "we're safe inside the archive" thing. Not so much. I don't know what I was going to do. I think I was going to try and hit her, but that's when Sasha knocked me to the floor. It was a good move, actually. Prentice didn't seem to expect it, and we crushed a lot of worms when we fell. They were slow to react, and we were running before they really went for us. I mean, all this happened in the space of a few seconds, so I'm not exactly certain. Sasha had to basically drag me behind her. I saw the shelf in front of us was about to topple. There were so many worms on it, so being the hero I am, I let go of her hand and told her to go get help. She made it out of the main door. I turned to run into the office. I was just trying to get a door between me and Prentice. I didn't know that's where you made the first hole. There were loads of them. Some jumped at me as I ran inside, so I dodged out of the way, but ended up sprawling into this pile of boxes that I thought were case files. Instead, I found myself lying on top of a whole bunch of CO2 canisters, which are damn hard, by the way. The worms were still coming, so I used them.
I went full gas Rambo. After that, my memory gets a bit fuzzy. I think the paramedic called it respiratory acidosis, from breathing in all the carbon dioxide rather than your more traditional oxygen. I remember finishing the first few extinguishers, killing the things, but they kept coming, so I grabbed a few more and saw the massive hole in the wall. There didn't seem much point in staying, so I went into the tunnels. They were cold, dry. You know that worm smell, that earthy, rotten smell?
Oh, yes.
Well, yeah. There weren't so many down there. I think they were almost all in the archives. I have a theory, actually. I think they weren't ready to attack when you found the tunnels. It's like something in the Institute slows them down and makes them, sluggish. And that noise they make, that squirming sound, they don't make it when they're in the tunnels. I don't know why. It was only when they came into the Institute, maybe the light or the aircon or something, I'm not sure, but I think it made them weaker, and they've been down there for months, breeding, building up their numbers until there were enough to properly bury us. Except you found that hidden passage, and they had to act.
Maybe. Could you describe the tunnels?
You were there.
Humour me.
I remember they sloped down and up and around. I couldn't keep track of where I was. I did see some more worms, though. They were fast. I only saw a couple, but it was still proper jump scare territory. I got them, though. It was really surreal. I only had my phone's torch, and it was hard to keep an eye out. I was so lightheaded. I wandered for, I don't know, maybe 10 minutes before I found a wall that seemed different. It looked like someone had just put some plasterboard over an entrance, and I could hear you and Martin on the other side. I broke through, and, well, you were there for the rest.
Quite. You weren't there when Martin found the body, though, were you?
No. I was quarantined, same as you.
And you didn't see it in the tunnels when you were first exploring?
No. I did see... maybe...
What?
No, it's just... I think I was still gassed and it was dark, but... I found a room.
Go on.
I didn't stay long, because it had a lot of worms in, and they weren't acting like the others. They were sort of wrapping around each other, like they were trying to form a thing, like a structure or something. A ring. I was probably still out of my skull and half hallucinated the whole thing, but it looked like they were trying to make a doorway.
Doorway? Is it still there?
No. I pumped 2 full extinguishers into that room. Nothing was getting out.
Good. Good. Go home, Tim. Get some sleep.
Yeah, sure.
Statement of Sasha James, archival assistant at the Magnus Institute, regarding the invasion by the entity formerly known as Jane Prentice. Statement recorded direct from subject, 29th July 2016. In your own time.
Yes. Where do you want me to begin? I was with you until I ran out to save Tim. Then we were separated and I fled into the Institute proper. I pulled the fire alarm because the worms were following me and I didn't want anyone else to get hurt. I went to Elias, we talked. We were going to save you, but the worms came and I fled into the artifact storage room. You know I hate the artifact storage room, so it must have been bad.
You used to work there, didn't you?
Yes. For 3 months. It was dreadful. I used to think that it was the most dangerous place in the Institute.
Not anymore.
Yes. Not anymore. It was safe enough. The worms didn't get in, and I stayed there until the fire system deployed. Then I ran out to get to a window. I saw the worms in the main institute. They shriveled and died. I don't think I'll ever forget that scream, though. I could hear Prentice screaming even from there.
Well, it's thanks to you, to be honest. If you hadn't met that Michael thing...
Yes. Michael. With the bones in his hands. We still don't know much about him, do we?
No, not yet. Sorry, getting distracted. You got as far as Jane Prentice's death.
Yes. I returned to the archives, and all the worms were dead. You and Tim were lying there, but you weren't moving. You just lay there. The dead worms still half inside you. The trapdoor was open next to you, and more were inside. I went over to check, and you were alive, so I pulled you back to where there was more air, and began to remove the worms. Are you all right?
Sorry, just difficult to hear, you know.
Yes, I understand. That was when Elias arrived with the fire brigade and the doctors and the hazmat people. They talked to me for a long time, and I did my best to explain the situation. They checked me for worm marks, but I was fine. They took you away, so I waited with Elias. He was looking at me strangely, but we were both quiet. It had been a very strange day. After an hour or so, we heard cries from the trapdoor. It was Martin. He was shouting about a body. We got him out, and Elias tried to get him to calm down and explain. He said he had found the body of the previous archivist, Gertrude Robinson. And that was when Elias called the police. I tried to calm him down, but he was in bad shape. The police arrived, and I gave them pretty much this same statement.
Right. What about the tape? You had the tape recorder, the one I'd just recorded Mr. Romeo's statement on. But when you gave it back, it was empty.
Yes. I dropped it a few times. The eject button must have been hit. I didn't notice until you pointed it out. It's probably around somewhere. Is it that important?
It's important to me. Are you feeling all right? You seem a bit out of it.
Yes. I am very tired. It's hard to keep track of things sometimes.
Right. Go get some rest, Sasha.
Yes, I will.
Voice mod got muted at some point. I don't know
Well,
how
now
that
tell
happened. I don't
me.
know how long that's been
I need
happening.
to hear it. I need to
Sorry
record
about
it.
that.
All right. Are you okay?
Fine.
Oh wait, I don't want to
Starting
open
to
it.
wear off, but it's fine. Statement of Martin Blackwood, archival assistant, etc., etc. Go.
Right. Well, I was doing some background checks for case
No.
0081709 when you and Sasha started screaming.
Yes,
So I
yes,
went to
yes. I was
Oh wait,
there.
the eyes weren't supposed
I
to
was
be
with you
closed,
for
though.
almost the whole time, and that tape survived just fine.
Sorry.
It's fine. I only need from when you got separated, from when you got lost in the tunnels.
No, I mean,
Oh.
I'm sorry I left you.
Martin.
It was an accident. I thought you two were with me. I mean, the worms came at us, and they were so much
Martin.
faster.
Hello?
And then there was the gas,
Oh.
and the running, and I thought you were right behind
Oh.
me. But when I turned around, you were
Ah.
gone. You were both gone. It
Oh.
was an accident.
I know, it's fine,
That's
Martin.
cool.
Everybody's...
The eyes, I mean. Good idea
Everyone's
from
fine.
EO.
I just need you to tell me what happened next,
Oh.
and then it's finished.
What?
All right.
What?
So, yeah. We
I
got
love it.
separated, so I tried shouting, but you didn't answer. The walls seemed to kill the sound dead, and there wasn't any echo. They were all stone, like really old, and there was no light except my torch. I always keep my torch on me, ever since I moved into the archive, so I had that at least. I wandered for a while. It's a maze down there, John. I don't know how far the passages go, maybe miles. I think it must be the old Millbank prison, like Tim was saying before. I even found some stairs at one point, but I really didn't want to go down them. I hadn't seen any worms for a few minutes, and weirdly enough, that actually started to worry me.
Color
Like,
Rave girl.
if there weren't any worms, then I'd gone too far from the Institute. And there was more dust in those corridors too, and dead rats. Even some discarded wine bottles. At one point, there was an empty packet of mint imperials.
Martin.
Sorry. Yeah. I was trying to go back. Not that I knew what back even meant down there when I heard the scream. I don't even know how to go about describing it, but I thought, well, I hoped. Well, when I started to find the shriveled bodies of worms all over the place, I knew she was dead.
I don't know why
I wanted
this
to get
came
out
out
of there.
sideways, but I
I
can
was looking for a
rotate.
way up, but it felt more and more like I was trapped. Every turn just led me to another empty corridor. And when I finally found a door, I thought it might actually get out, but instead, it was a small room. Square. There was dust on everything. Cardboard boxes were piled around. They were full of old cassette tapes.
That's where you found her.
Yes. She was sat in a wooden chair in the middle of the room. No worms, no cobwebs, just an old corpse. Gertrude Robinson. She was slumped forward, but I could see her mouth. So I ran, and I found the trapdoor soon afterwards.
Did you find the room again?
I don't know. Maybe. The police certainly expect me to, although I get the feeling they're not too keen to explore the tunnels either.
Martin, how did Gertrude Robinson die?
I don't know. Not for sure. It was so dark, and I only saw the body for a few seconds. The police were quite clear that the cause of death could be absolutely anything.
Martin, how did she die?
She was shot.
Shot.
3 times that I could see.
She died
3
because
shots
she
to
was
the
short?
chest.
I'm sorry.
Right. Thank you, Martin.
Sure.
Gertrude Robinson, the last archivist at the Magnus Institute and my predecessor, was murdered. There were no worms.
This is Rave Girl from Poppin' Music.
Strange, ghostly apparitions to warp her mind or caves to entomb her. She was killed in the archives by someone who used a gun. And that scares me far more than any spectre or twisted creature. Because that means someone here is a killer. The police will investigate thoroughly, I have no doubt, but given their track record in this matter, I am not optimistic. There is something in these files, in these statements. I know that now, some deeper mystery. I think Gertrude Robinson found it, and I think that is why they killed her. Some of my tapes are missing. Maybe it was Prentice, but she seemed more interested in the written files, and the other tapes seem fine. There's no sign of debris or anything that would indicate they've been destroyed. But, in addition to the tapes Sasha lost earlier, the tapes for cases 0051701 and 0160204 are gone. I don't know why these two specifically, but I cannot trust anyone. I'm going to figure this out, and I'm not going to stop. They'll have to kill me first.
Whoa.
End recording.
I guess I'll have to kill him. I'm just kidding.
The Magnus Archives will return. Season 1 has featured Jonathan Sims as the archivist, Alexander J. Newell as Martin Blackwood, Mike LeBeau as Tim Stoker, Lottie Broomhall as Sasha James, Ben Meredith as Elias Bouchard, Lydia Nicholas as Melanie King, Martin Corcoran as Dr. Lionel Elliott and Bregan, Stephen Violich as Hope, Katie Davison as Naomi Hearn, Hannah Brankin as Jane Prentice and Laura Popham, and Evelyn Hewitt as Not Sasha. The series was produced by Alexander J. Newell, Michael LeBeau, and Murray Porter. It was written by Jonathan Sims and directed by Alexander J. Newell. This podcast is distributed by Rusty Quill and licensed under a Creative Commons Attribution Non-Commercial Share-alike International License. For more information, visit rustyquill.com. Thanks for listening.
We will listen to all of season 1. And yeah. I don't know if you heard how we used to do this thing called the Poppin' Challenge, where we challenge ourselves to draw every Poppin' music character. I've drawn Rave Girl before, but like, not this outfit. So not just every character, but also every character's appearance. And then we stopped for like almost a year and suddenly wanted to get back to doing that. So I posted sketches in the Discord that I was gonna color tonight. Oh, bless you, kitty! Of Rave Girl and MZD. And I was mainly just planning on coloring Rave Girl tonight, but I might color MZD too right after this. I think I will. And I think I will listen to more System Speak podcast. Might take me a minute to find the my place. Because the tab had been closed. Let's see, I know it was the second from the beginning. I love coloring Rave Girl because she's so easy. All you gotta do is just line her, and that's about it. It's kind of fun. I mean, you gotta color in the black, and then there's like some red. She's not always red. Sometimes she's blue, sometimes she's pink. I think she's been red, blue, and pink. These outlines. Can't remember. I think that. I almost want to say she's been green. I'm not sure. Let's see, podcast. And I hit 2. Go to the second page. And let's see if I can find where I was. Oh, I remember Donkey Kicks. That was a funny one. I can't remember. Everything's loading in so slowly for some reason. What's going on? The little podcasts are like popping in and out on the Okay. Let's see. I can't remember if I saw Listen to Pep Talk. Oh no, I remember that one. Okay, I think I'm on this one called Easter. I'm pretty sure. Oh, it's one where she talks to the husband.
I can't even do this. We bantered. It was so cute.
It's okay.
Okay, again, I'm still not functioning and just recorded like half a podcast without actually recording it. So I'm not impressed with myself right now.
We did all the jokes in that take. This one's just going to be all boring.
We had sign language jokes and braille jokes. It was amazing.
Yeah, you should have been there.
Oh, train gone. Sadness. Okay. I can't even repeat the jokes because it's not funny this time. But here's the thing. We have got, obviously with the husband today on the podcast, and we have gotten lots of emails about Molly's talk that she shared on an episode a while back. and a lot of other people who had organizational abuse or ritual abuse or other kinds of church trauma. And it is also Easter Sunday in America, which is all things commercialism. And so if you do not want to talk about church or religion or ritual abuse of any kind, then definitely skip this episode. But I wanted to come full circle and share about some things. And so I want the husband, that's you.
Yes,
me?
it is the me.
Oh, how many of you are there?
I have an associative identity. So there are many sides of me, but we all slosh around together.
That is why I love you, Slosher. You're sloshed.
Slosher.
I totally sloshed.
So, oh my goodness. So
Can we
he
replace
is going to have his
singlet
nerd
with
hat on,
slosher?
except still be adorable, because he always is. And
It's a nerd fedora.
so skip this episode if you don't want to talk church things. It's not like a preachy kind of episode, but it is some historical things and stuff we shared with the children today when they were asking questions about Easter eggs and other things. And I think that later, after I finish talking with him, which is never because he's awesome. Thanks for being my best friend.
Aww.
Take that, Julie. No, I'm just kidding. So I just now told the husband that I'm going to spend some time with Julie. She's coming to visit, actually. And so that's why I'm teasing. Okay, so here's what's going on. We're going to talk about some traditions and some history and some different perspectives that we have from our own faith tradition and why that matters and how that's been healing to us. So if this is not an episode for you to listen to, totally skip. It won't hurt our feelings. We won't even actually know. But if you do want to listen to it, it'll be kind of Molly-ish in that kind of sharing our perspective and tying some pieces together, as well as by the end of the episode, I want to bring it full circle to talk about some DID related things and some trauma related things in a churchy kind of way, spiritually speaking. So, no pressure, husband. I'm really sad that we lost the first part of what we shared already.
That's okay.
They'll never know how cute and funny we are.
They can just imagine.
I'm
Insert cute and
imagining
funny
it.
line here.
Nice. Unscripted, folks. Okay, so we were downstairs at lunch. It is Easter Sunday.
It is Easter Sunday.
And you taught Sunday school today.
For the 13 and 14-year-olds.
Ooh, even better.
They are so... I was going to say focused, but I knew that was just sarcastic. They are so developing into people. They're working on it.
You're so compassionate.
I'm trying.
So tell us about your class today.
So we started out by asking the kids if they have any Easter traditions in their family. We did not get very far beyond Easter eggs and bunnies. I mean, they all know about Jesus and the crucifixion and all that, but as far as traditions go, that was what they talked about.
Right.
And so I said, why do we use Easter eggs and bunnies as the symbols of Easter? And they were a little confused. Somebody came up with the idea that they represent new life and rebirth and all of that, and that was good. I think that's kind of how we apply them now. But it brings up the question also of why is the holiday called Easter? Where does the name Easter come from?
Because you go east.
Because it doesn't come from the direction.
Easter. Oh my goodness.
Well, that's
it
what I
doesn't.
thought when I was a kid. I was like, the sun coming up in the east, so we call it Easter.
Oh, that's really clever, actually.
I was a smart kid.
And how did bunnies become a symbol of new life? Like, I know they're pretty prolific, traditionally and in cartoons especially. But, like, lots of animals
Yeah.
have lots of babies in springtime.
Bye
and so-
bye.
So I am not a scholar in the way that Dr. E is. So if I am incorrect in this, please feel free to send your complaints.
Don't send any complaints. What's wrong with you?
It's not my email. So Easter is the name of a fertility goddess from
Hello, pleasure.
uh-huh.
Okay, go ahead.
Yes, I'm sure that's involved. Yes. A European fertility goddess whose symbols were rabbits and eggs because they represent fertility and birth. And as the medieval Christian church was expanding, this happened in several different locations with different holidays. They would come across an existing festival that was already entrenched in the culture. And if it was not something that they could disband in some way, then they would co-opt it.
So like appropriation, but more?
Or? Yes. So like Christmas is the classic one, because the nativity story in the Bible suggests that it happened in the springtime because they're shepherds out with their sheep who are having the lambs. So that's a springtime story.
So even though, according to this story, Jesus was born in the springtime, like now-ish.
Yeah, we have his party in December.
We have his birthday party in December.
Yes, and that's because there was already a big celebration that happened on that time around the 25th of December, and they couldn't get people to stop celebrating it, and so they transformed it into the Christian holiday of the birth of Jesus. So in the same way, they adopted this springtime festival of fertility and life and birth and all that into a celebration of the crucifixion and resurrection. There are other interesting pieces about it too. There's something called computus, which is a branch of mathematics specifically about figuring out when Easter is supposed to happen, because it involves lots of different kinds of calendars. There's lunar calendars and solar calendars, and there's Jewish holidays, and then there's full moons and all these different things to find out exactly when it is.
Is that your only math fact?
You notice I didn't use any numbers in my discussion of that branch of mathematics. But look up in Wikipedia, computus.
How do you spell it?
Computus. And it is the most spectacular sort of doublespeak I've ever seen. Like, I'm a pretty smart guy, and I have no idea what they're talking about. So there's just all of this confusion about what Easter is and what it means, and parts of different cultures coming in, and all of this sort of sophistry and the philosophies of men getting all mixed together. And then we talked with the kids. I had the kids in my class read through the four Gospels where it talks about...
Do you mean Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John?
I do mean those very four. Each one is an account of the life of Jesus. And I had the kids read specifically the passages about the Garden of Gethsemane, which in our church we consider to be extremely important. Like, that's where the most important stuff happens in our understanding of it.
And this is a big deal. And I know it's where you're going, but it's a big deal because I grew up in Protestant churches and none of them ever talked about this. I had no idea until I was baptized and was taught in this church.
Well, and the reason is because if you look at all four of those, it does not talk about what actually is going on in the garden other than Jesus praying and saying, please, if there's any way that I cannot do this, let me not do it, and suffering and bleeding and all of that.
That's me. If there's any way I cannot do any suffering, let's do that. It's like the whole chapter on avoidance. I'm learning about that in group workbook, you know.
Nice.
Jesus was an avoidance?
But he did it.
Oh.
It's like I tell the kids that being brave doesn't mean you're not scared. It just means you do it anyway.
Wait, what? Say it again.
Being brave doesn't mean you're not scared. It just means you do it anyway.
This is why I married him, you guys. That's a nugget right there.
That nugget's all yours. So should I talk about like our church perspective?
Sure. I've never said the name of our church on the podcast. I've just referred to my faith tradition. Some people have guessed it because they know or have been exposed enough to understand, but I've never mentioned it specifically.
Are you doing it now, or are we still mysterious?
No, I'm just telling you that so you know. But you can keep going.
So we are Christian for sure, but our church has a different perspective on things than a lot of traditional Christianity. So we believe that all people before we were born on earth existed as spirits, and we lived with our Heavenly Father, and that while we were there, we learned and grew and developed and had relationships and talents and all kinds of things. But there came a point where our growth hit a limit because we wanted to become like our Heavenly Father, but there were two things in our way. First was that he had a perfected physical body, an eternal body. And second was he was perfect spiritually, which meant that he always made good choices, even without any limitations on what he could choose or what he knew about. He always chose the right thing. I always say that there's not a bad word out there that the Heavenly Father doesn't know. He just doesn't use them.
That's amazing. I love it.
So, in order to overcome those two obstacles, an earth was created and we came here. So now we have a physical body and we have the opportunity to choose without being under the visible supervision of God.
Like sending the children out to play in the backyard.
Yeah.
And who are they really? Who is their character when we're not watching?
That's what I tell them. Yeah, who you are when we're not looking is who you really are. So we are now here with the opportunity to choose freely. But that leaves us with two problems. One, we have this nice physical body, but at the end of at the end of our life here, we die. And then once again, we're without a physical body. And two, we, with our marvelous freedom, also make a lot of bad choices. And those bad choices separate us from the presence of Heavenly Father, so that when this life ends, it makes us unqualified to return to him. So to overcome those two things from the very beginning, Heavenly Father prepared a Savior as part of his plan, and that's Jesus Christ. And he came to earth not as an ordinary person, but with the ability to overcome those two things for us. So no one can overcome death on their own, so everybody has access to the resurrection. Jesus died and was able to take back a perfected physical body, and because he broke those chains, that's going to be made available for all of us.
So everybody gets that, no
Everybody
matter what.
gets that. It's your participation prize for coming to Earth.
So, like, even people who don't agree or don't like or don't believe in Jesus or whatever, they still get resurrected because that's just done.
Yes.
They made it this far to Earth.
And having a blessing, having a body we consider to be a blessing, that we will miss it when we die and have to wait for a resurrection.
That's a good reminder, because I think we take our bodies for granted, even when we're struggling with them.
Yeah.
Like whether that's chemo or different addictions or whatever people struggle with, or like our kids with their special needs.
Yeah.
We still forget that even then it's still a blessing, and there are things that we are here to learn in this condition that we couldn't learn any other way.
Yeah. So the resurrection is pretty clearly talked about in the Bible. What is less clearly talked about is the Savior took upon himself the punishment for all of our sins, all of the things that made us imperfect and less than godly, and paid that price so that we can then repent and return to Heavenly Father.
Now, see, growing up in Protestant churches, I had an understanding of that in some way, but it was all related to the whole cross thing. It was not about the garden. No one talked about the garden other than, like, the disciples fell asleep or whatever.
Yeah.
But there was nothing. It was all focused on the cross. But the cross was the physical death.
Yeah. So somehow, in like God time, I don't believe this even happened in mortal time, somehow the Savior took all of the guilt and all of the shame and all of the suffering and all of the imperfection that separated us from God and paid for that for us. It's something that only someone who was not already in debt spiritually could do. And he is the only one who was able to live without sin. So he did that for all of us. And it was so excruciating that he bled. Gethsemane means oil press, like olive oil. And with olive oil, a weight crushes down on the olives until the oil squeezes out, like blood squeezing out of your pores.
So this intercession,
Yes.
this prayer, this taking on of all of our weakness, our challenges, our sins, our mistakes, our choices when we didn't know better, our choices when we did know better, all of those things.
Yeah.
That was in the garden.
Yes.
What?
And I used to think of it as like sins as discrete little amounts of bad behavior, like taking black Legos out of a bag of white Legos, right? They're just little pieces. But the more I've thought about it, the more I've realized that sin, these imperfections, don't have a specific beginning and end. Like, let's say I choose to rob a bank.
Oh, please don't.
No, I won't.
Not without me. I'm just kidding.
You can be my Bonnie.
Thank you, baby.
But there were
Thank you,
thoughts
baby.
and other actions that came before that. And there were thoughts and actions that came before that. And there were thoughts and actions that came before that. You didn't one day just wake up and randomly rob a bank. It came as a whole series of choices and desires and thoughts and habits. And all of those have been paid for. So the more I thought about it, the more I came to understand that he didn't just pay for our sins like these little chunks of badness. He paid for our ungodliness. He paid for our imperfection. And to do that, he would have had to carry the weight of our entire lives. For him to be able to carry our sins and understand us perfectly, he has to carry our whole selves. There is not one moment of our lives that he has not experienced with us. And that is the weight that he carried in the Garden of Gethsemane.
Now, this matters to the podcast because what you just said also includes being abused.
Yes. Yes, it does.
Because when I've said, like, this is too hard to talk about, I can't keep going, I don't want to go to therapy. Like, I'll hang out with a therapist, but I don't want to go to therapy. Or I can go to therapy, but I don't want to talk about hard things. Or is there a way around this without facing, like when we talk about avoidance, is there a way to get through this without having to face what's really caused all this and what's really been hard and what really happened back then? And you say, why do we have to do it?
So the wife and I have talked about forgiveness a lot, and how in order to forgive someone perfectly, you have to acknowledge the truth perfectly. Right? In order to feel forgiven yourself perfectly, you have to be known perfectly. You can't be hiding a piece of yourself and feel like you've been known and forgiven. And in the same way, in order to forgive others, we also have to acknowledge the truth. Because if you're setting part of that aside as a secret, then you're not forgiving that. I'm not saying like secret something you're telling around. I just mean as something you're not acknowledging. So in our conversations, as part of forgiving yourself, as part of forgiving parents and abusers, as part of moving past all of that, there has to be an honest acknowledgement of all of the truth, which is really hard to do. It takes a lot of time. But that is how the Savior forgives us perfectly, because he also had to have a perfect, empathetic knowledge of our lives in order to actually forgive us perfectly. And I believe that he carried the weight of our whole lives, that he is in some way with us through all of our experiences in that garden moment.
And I think that even talking about forgiveness can be so triggery because I don't think it always means what people think it means. Or people use the word wrong.
Yeah.
And it's not about everything's okay.
Yes, it is absolutely not that.
It's like almost the opposite of that. It's saying, here is what is not okay. Here is exactly what was not okay. And letting go of that and let that...
Moving past it, yeah. They say that not forgiving someone is like drinking poison and expecting them to die.
Right.
When you hold on to that anger and bad feelings, but then how do you how do you let it go without discounting the actual pain that it caused? How do you still respect yourself and acknowledge the accountability of others while within yourself letting go?
Let it go. I'm just kidding.
The magic of Disney.
Oh, so terrible, right? I think for me, part of that is understanding that it's not my job to judge. It's not my job to deliver consequences. My job is to live my life, and my job is to move forward with where I am now and who I want to be and where I want to go. So forgiveness for me is learning to do the part that you're talking about that I'm not good at yet of, okay, I have to face every bit of this, and all of it needs to be acknowledged in some way.
Yeah.
And the truth of all of it be out. But then when I'm letting go of it, the letting go of peace is not denying the past or shoving it down or separating it from myself. It's just the acknowledging that this is now between you and God.
Yes.
Because I've spoken my part.
Yeah.
And so God can deliver the consequences, and God can deliver the justice, and God can decide who gets mercy or not, because that's not about anything I have to do.
Can I give an example?
Please do.
So there are things that I know that you struggle with now that are because of trauma that's happened in your past.
What? I don't struggle with anything.
But the people who are interacting with you now, who might have a hard time with some aspects of what's going on, don't know those things in your past. And so you as a person, I as a person, desperately want to know that I am understood as I am being judged, I guess is a horrible word, assessed, understood. Like, I need to be seen. I think of the bad things that I do, and I desperately pray, oh, Heavenly Father, you know that I meant to do something good. Like, you understood my intentions and my history and my weakness and my efforts and my failures and all of that, right? So in order to be a perfect judge, the Savior has to understand us perfectly. And in that same way, the people who have done wrong to us, which is absolutely wrong, they are bad things that have been done, but we don't understand those people in the way that we ourselves want to be understood when judgment is passed. It is impossible for us to judge those people because of that limit on our understanding, right? We can say those things were bad things, and they definitely affected me and have affected the rest of my life.
And that has to be a part of it. Like,
yes.
That's part of what they need to understand.
Yes.
At some point.
But the rest of it, you just have to put over into God's hands, because you don't know. You don't know their history. When you and I were fostering, one of our first kiddos was an adorable little 9-year-old boy, and we both felt pretty confident that when he grew up, he was going to be a sexual predator.
Right.
And because of the way that he had been traumatized and tortured as a child, like,
and it wasn't something like we wanted to condemn him to.
No.
And not something like we found.
It just felt like that was the path he was on.
You could just see it.
So a fair and loving God is not going to just see that one little piece of him and say, no, boo you. Like, you missed out because you were born in these situations. Too bad. No, he understands that we are affected by our experiences and by our history, and he sees how we try our best within the context of who we are. So he has to understand us perfectly in order to judge us perfectly.
So you mean things that happened to my parents when they were little?
Yeah.
Whoa.
There's no way for you to perfectly understand what happened to your parents or what happened to their parents. You know your interactions with them. You know how that has affected you. And you have come so far in working to love them and to work through that trauma. But they've had their own trauma, or else they wouldn't have behaved like that. Remember, sin is not a Lego. It's like a whole tapestry of experiences and choices all worked in together.
But if that's true, then it's also true that it's not just our fault.
The thing that happened to you?
Yeah.
Of course it's not your fault.
What if I'm the black Lego?
You're not a black Lego.
Well, I'm a white Lego.
You are a bag of Legos of many colors. No, you're not a bad Lego. You, too, are a person with choices and experiences. And other people's choices are not your fault. Your choices are your own responsibility. We always used to tell our kids would like tattle on kids or try and control other kids or be bossy or whatever. And we used to always say, focus on yourself. Like, leave the other kids alone. But we've changed the wording in our families of that. In our family to say, focus on your choices. Because you can't control other people's choices. Sometimes other people's choices are terrible and they affect you in bad ways. But focus on your choices and what you can do, because ultimately that's all you can do.
And that's a part of everyone coming here to Earth.
Absolutely.
And to having like free agency. Everyone came here to learn to choose right.
Yeah.
But the only way we could really learn that is to also have the choice to choose bad. And some people do.
All of us came here to have bad experiences, honestly.
Right.
Like, we had to learn the things that we couldn't learn in the presence of a loving Heavenly Father. And for us to have a full spectrum of understanding, a full breadth of the capacity of human and godly compassion and knowledge and all of that, we couldn't just have happy things happen to us.
Happy has to happen.
We have to experience hard things.
Sorry,
and the bad things that happened to you as a child, they break my heart and they make me cry. But I also know that you are a fuller and richer person because of them.
Wait, what happened to me makes you cry?
Yeah.
Aww.
So, like the last month or so in therapy has been super hard.
Yeah. Different
than before. Because I think we're starting to talk about things differently than before.
Yeah.
And that's just hard.
Yeah.
And I know like our nightmares have been worse or whatever. But also,
yeah,
there's something about however things went down in our family, and I'm trying not to be like abuse specific enough that it's too triggering for the podcast, but just being real, there's something about the way things happened in my family or the way the dynamic was set up in the family, that like part of me was so focused on dealing with the mother and part of me was so focused on dealing with the father. And last week in therapy, she asked one question, like just one simple question. And I don't want to talk about right now on the podcast what the issue was or what the question was, because like it's just not trauma dumping on the podcast. But the one question made me realize that both parents are responsible for pretty much everything that happened as the parents. And I don't mean that both of them did the same things wrong.
Right.
But it was like the first time that my brain comprehended for just a moment that both of my parents were, what was that word? We talked about it. I asked you about the word. When you're responsible for something.
Oh, you got the
like a stewardship or accountable.
No,
the system speak.
Complicit.
Oh, yeah. They were both complicit.
Happy has to happen.
And so
it has to.
They were not stewards of my safety. They were not stewards of my healthy, normal development.
They should have been.
And they were both complicit in some of the things that the other was doing, or responsible for what they did that was not good.
Yeah.
And that moment in therapy, like, physically hurt my body. Like, I don't know how to explain it. Like, it made my brain hurt. And I know I say that all the time because I know your brain can't really hurt, but it did. Like I could not. It was like a moment where all of a sudden I was aware that I was in therapy, but it wasn't me in therapy, but I was aware of it. And I was aware that this was the piece that was clicking in, like, all the way down. Like, if our entire system was a tall building, which it's not, but I mean, like, as a visual,
yeah,
it was like all of a sudden the therapist just pushed the elevator button and down we went and up we went. Like, it went, whatever that piece of information went all the way through.
Wow.
And it's been really difficult to sit with that. So how do... I think understanding pieces like what you share about the whole story needing to be put together and out there, because that's the only way it's fully known, the only way we are fully known. That is a powerful piece for healing for me, and it somehow empowers layers that otherwise would just be shame. Because, like, guilt is when you do something wrong, and so sins or transgressions or whatever, like in a spiritual context, that's the language they use, right? When you make a wrong choice. But shame is about who you are being bad. I mean, feeling bad for who you are, as opposed to what you did. And so this is about what you said, like, we're not pieces of Legos. And
why not?
It's bigger than that. And it externalizes it somehow. It puts what happened to me is out here, and I need to talk about this piece so that that piece can be swept away or cleaned or put back on them where it belongs, because it's not mine. They put it on me, but it's not my piece, it's their piece. Like the therapist has been saying for the last month or so, like, it's not your secret. You can talk about it, and you're not going to have consequences for talking about it, because it's not your secret. It's their secret.
Yeah.
And so it externalizes it and puts it out there, so we can either just get rid of it altogether or put it back on them because it is theirs.
Yeah.
But that's a very different thing than this piece is in me, and so therefore I am a terrible and terrible forever and doomed to be terrible forever.
And that brings us back to the Garden of Gethsemane.
Right. Exactly. Which is why I wanted to talk about this, because the garden is a whole big piece that I never had access to growing up.
Yeah. The Savior in the Garden of Gethsemane carried the weight of our entire lives, all of our sickness and sorrow and loneliness and bad choices and suffering. We are not carrying them alone. He is carrying them with us.
Wait. Oh. Okay. Thank you.
I love you.
Yo.
Happy Easter.
Wait, is Roach over at your house? I forgot you live close to Roach? Or does Roach visit?
Thank you for joining us with System Speak.
Can Roach hear me right
now? A podcast about dissociative identity disorder.
Fuck you, Roach.
You can listen to the podcast on Spotify, Google Play, and iTunes. Or follow along on our website, www.systemspeak.org. Thanks for listening.
Crab game.
I'm gonna play music since I'm almost done with MZD. Oh wow. I need- Let's see if I can find the same video. There it is. It's Splatoon music, but it's like a lo-fi version. I just searched video game chill music and this lo-fi and video game station came up. Yeah, it's like a lo-fi version of a song. It says it's called Into the Light. It sounded like this song when you lose in, I think, Splatoon 1. At some point, anyway. Oh wait, I just saw Bomb Rush and I thought you were talking about Bomb Rush Cyberpunk. I don't know the song names. This one says it's from Splatoon 2. I'm guessing that's the Splatoon 2 soundtrack. Am I done? Done, I just gotta add the background. Yeah, that is coming soon. Have you seen the videos proving that Splatoon uses delay llama? What's that? It sounds bad for llamas. I don't think llamas like to be delayed. It's a meme effect. I think this is the last image we had to draw for Poppin' Music Peace. So we drew all the Poppin' Music Peace characters, which isn't that impressive because there's only like 9 of them. Like that, there's more characters in the game, but they're a reused animation, if that makes sense. There's only 9 like new animations for Peace. I think Jaime Riddles has even less. They really started just reusing animations way more as a Piece, I think, but at least they're still making more games. That's how I see it. Still games. Oh, that was such a perfect place to cut it off. Oh, why am I sad? Oh, because I typed 5. I typed Poppin' Music 25 when I went to save at 5 makes me sad. Okay, let me turn. It's Sonic time, baby. I actually stopped pretty soon after too. I had a good on time moment. Trying to make a joke combining, oh whoa, step on me, and I'm a piece of Lego. I'm not sure how that works. I'm a piece of Lego, step on me. Oh whoa? I don't know. Thank you for coming to my stream. I'm excited about the Goozleen Plains YouTuber, especially because I think we're gonna end up using that in just a few minutes. And I'm excited about the Halloween debut tomorrow. That's so exciting. So, I'll go over our schedule real quickies. Tomorrow night is Hollow debut. Hollow's gonna stream Hollow Knight. I unplugged my tablet. I got her for a second. Oh yeah, so next week we're gonna start kind of a new schedule where we're streaming at 11 p.m. EST and 2 p.m. EST. So on Sunday, Monday, and Wednesday, we're streaming at 11 p.m. EST, and Tuesday and Thursdays we stream 2 p.m. EST. We wanted to free up a couple nights, and we also thought it might just be like get us out of a state of repetition. Like I don't know. I think things feel kind of mundane if you do the same exact thing every day. So it might be fun to mix it up a little bit. So Tuesday at 2 p.m. EST, I'm gonna stream One Shot, and I might do some coloring after because I think I'm pretty close to the end of the game. So I might finish early and do some coloring. And then Wednesday at 11 p.m. EST, Q is my girlfriend. She's going to watch I think the final 4 episodes of Brandy and Mr. Whiskers, and also play probably some Splatoon 2 Octo expansion. And then Thursday at 2 p.m., Chalky's playing Technic Beat and probably Bust a Groove 2. And there was like an archery phone game she found that she wants to play too, maybe if there's time. I forgot what it was called though. And let's see. And then Sunday night at 11 p.m. EST, Meadow is going to read Magical Girl Racing Project Book 4. Yay! I'm glad you're excited for Hollow. I'm so excited for Hollow World too, obviously. I think I might raid the Fookster because we're gonna be over there in a minute to do Sonic. I'd make Goozleen. I think it would be really funny if we watched the Slime Monster episode. I know that episode already happened, but if it happened tonight, I think it would have been funny. Anyway, okay, I Ray, and have a wonderful day or night wherever you're at. We are looking forward to seeing you next time, especially tomorrow night for Hollow debut.